All right, welcome back to the party, everybody. This is Morty, and I am your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. How's everybody doing tonight? Everybody, hit that like and subscribe. You know I would do it for you. And let's party. I was hoping. Oh, we got our boy Morty in the building. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. Of course, every donation comes with a treat for Morty. So as you guys know, I really wanted to do a part 2 on the Dave Smith Douglas Murray debate, but you guys voted against it. However, I still get my wish coming true, because Dave Smith was not only on Piers Morgan debating yet another expert, but he kind of covered them both in a podcast where we might, you know, the debate's not going to take the whole time. So we're going to jump around. It is going to be fun. Shout out to Jaden. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. We also got our boy TV Viewerski. Welcome, 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 guys. As always, if you cannot hear the video, please do let me know.
Almost as interesting as the main debate were some of the issues it raised about the way that debate has transformed in the digital age. First is so-called credentialism. Should someone with old-fashioned qualifications get more of a say than someone who does a lot of research but ultimately has none? Do you need to travel to a specific country or experience a war to have valid opinions about what's happening there? And should the podcasters who now wield more influence than any TV network be more judicious about who they platform? Or is that kind of censorious, judgmental gatekeeping the very reason they got so popular in the first place? Finally,
yeah, I think that Piers just hit the nail on the head. The entire reason that podcasting took over is because the fact checking and the experts and the elitism and the gatekeeping move people away from mainstream media. That's how we got here.
Who won? Well, joining me to debate all this are two people with very different views on all the above. One is John Spencer, Executive Director of the Urban Warfare Institute, who took issue with a number of Dave Smith points and felt he was epically dismantled by Douglas Murray. And the other is Dave Smith himself, host of Part of the Problem. He's a comedian, a libertarian commentator, and he felt, of course, that he remained epically intact. And we'll be joined a little later by Eric Weinstein. So let me start.
I'm going to guess that Dave did not use the terminology epically. What was it? Epically...
that he remained epically intact.
Yeah, I don't think that those are Dave's words.
Joined a little later by Eric Weinstein. So let me start. First of all, Dave Smith, are you surprised, Dave, about the reaction to your showdown with Douglas Murray?
Well, there's a reason people are willing to pay Piers Morgan to read ads for them.
And do you believe you won?
I'm not surprised at all by the reaction. I was surprised by how the debate itself went. But as it was going that way, I knew exactly what the reaction was going to be. I thought that was pretty clear. I think that, you know, I would say this, what I thought was kind of strange about it was, and I know probably both of you we could all think of examples like this. Like there's been many times where people were challenged to a debate and they refused to debate them. Dr. Hotez with Bobby Kennedy comes to mind for me, but there's lots of examples like this. And and sometimes that's reasonable and sometimes it's not reasonable. Like I think in the case of Hotez, he should have debated Bobby Kennedy. But at the same time, I've been challenged to debate flat earthers and people with 150 followers. And I'm not particularly interested in doing that. So sometimes you'll see people who go, they'll take the path of like, look, this person's beneath me. I'm not going to debate this issue. I have no interest in doing this. And then sometimes people will agree to debate. I think,
and this is, you know, one of the things that Dave has been saying a lot. I remember this part, but let's say hello to Dylan Soup. Oh, he's back. He is back. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Not covering up my captions anymore. Very, very good to see ya. I am doing it fantastic. Thank you so much. Piers recognized that and is capitalizing on it. Exactly. We are in a new world.
Have no interest in doing this. And then sometimes people will agree to debate. I think Douglas Murray is the first person I've ever seen try to do both. And it made for kind of an interesting spectacle. If you're asking me if I think I won, I mean, you can let other people can have their opinion on that. Obviously, I'm biased.
This is Meet the Parents reference, right?
In saying that, I think that the overwhelming reaction that I've seen is much more that Douglas Murray lost than I won. I think I was there to debate Ukraine and Israel, and Douglas was there. He made it more of a
I'm the only one who could determine who's allowed to speak.
A bigger kind of watershed moment about the experts versus the podcasters, which was not what I thought we were going to do. But I think in doing that, it's hard to even say win or lose. You're going into an environment where you couldn't have worked harder to turn the entire audience against you. Obviously, by definition, the audience of the Joe Rogan Experience,
they're gonna like Joe Rogan. Shout out to Soundwave Surfer. Welcome to the party. Well, let's try that one again. I don't think either won the debate because the debate never really got going in any meaningful way. Instead of becoming a debate on who should be qualified to have the debates. I completely agree with you, and that's essentially Dave's position as well, as he'll bring up a number of times. It's like agreeing to fight with somebody, and then them saying, "Well, actually, I don't even need to fight you now that we're here in the ring because I'm just a better fighter than you." What? Like, okay, maybe, but let's figure it out. Shout out to King Nirvana. Welcome to the party. Very good to see you, sir. Welcome.
Against you. Obviously, by definition, the audience of the Joe Rogan Experience are on the side of the podcasters being allowed to talk about these issues. And as I said in the debate, I don't think the expert class has a very good track record.
Yeah, I mean,
at least not lately. Because we're actually able to see what the experts say and where they get their information. They may have been just as wrong before, but we didn't know because we weren't the experts.
I really enjoyed it, for what it's worth. I've had you both on my show, of course.
I said, shit, me too.
A lot, and I enjoy watching you go at each other. I've seen lots of praise for you, Dave, indisputably, a lot. I've also seen, and we've just got a little summary of some of the lack of praise for you. Dave Smith was eviscerated by Douglas Murray, hosted Henry Hobson. This is what happens when bluster and shallow thinking go up against a considered intellect. John Daly said, watching someone like Douglas Murray absolutely crucify Dave Smith is a real treat. And
is it though? I mean, I'm sure it would be, but we didn't get that.
Tom Tomlinson, Dave Smith is ignorant, Douglas Murray crushed him. And the only reason I read those three out is it shows me that on social media in particular, when these kind of events happen, and I call them events because everybody watches them, when they do happen, there's very little middle ground. There are very little people who pop up on social media and go, you know what, on the one hand, I thought Dave made some good points. On the other, Douglas made some good points. And
I mean, I try to be that guy, and I try to be like, all right, let's take the conversation as it is and judge it on its face, on the words that are actually being spoken. I try. I'm certainly not perfect, but as Stanway Surfer was just saying, there wasn't really much there to critique on Dave's side because it wasn't really the debate that they came in for. And so if you're going to posture yourself as an expert and say, no, I think only the experts should be able to speak. And if you as a podcaster, which was always a bro podcast, it was never a science or history or politics or anything like that. If you as a bro podcast, just because you got successful, now you need to have fact checkers. Nah.
On the one hand, I thought Dave made some good points. On the other, Douglas made some good points, and I really enjoyed the experience, which is probably what Joe Rogan thought. But no, we're in a very tribal world where before you guys even sat down together with Joe Rogan, they'd already decided you were going to be disintegrated, dismantled, and crucified. And similarly,
just like the Sam Cedar fans.
Similarly, a lot of people who like you and don't like Douglas Murray felt exactly the same way about what was going to happen to him. What does that tell you about discourse today, and what do we do about that?
I will say that while I absolutely had faith that Dave would be able to handle himself, I am in no way was like, oh, Dave's going to crush this dude. I was very much going in excited to listen to both sides. So maybe not so much on Dave's side, but certainly the wokies on Douglas's side. TV Viewerski said Murray came in and basically called Joe an anti-Semite. Not a great way to start the show. Shout out to Equality and Deference because vagina over on Rumble. Welcome to the party. Good evening to you as well. Said liked and shared. Thank you so very, very much. You guys know how much those little things, those little free buttons to press help out the channel so very much. Thank you. And welcome to the party. We also got Love to Eat Puss. Oh boy, said from what I saw, Murray crushed Dave. All right, well, we will see if that, if that opinion stays, because basically going to be not a repeat, but same kind of thing. We also got Avery. Welcome to the party. Very good to see you. What, this one? I don't know. I just downloaded laugh sound effect. I don't know where it's from.
To him, what does that tell you about discourse today, and what do we do about that, if anything?
Well, for the record, I will
that's a good part. What do we do, if anything? I mean, nothing. We continue having conversations.
say, I mean, and I try to not live my life in on internet comments, but for this one, I just could not help myself. But if you look at the YouTube comments or the Spotify comments, I mean, it's overwhelmingly hostile toward Douglas. It seems to me.
Shout out to League of Legends. Calling Different said, the fuck? How can love to eat think that? Well, a lot of people did. And so as we watch this, we'll see, this guy, John Spencer here, essentially takes the same positions as Douglas. So let's see it play out.
I mean, it's overwhelmingly hostile toward Douglas. It seems to me that there's every account on Twitter with an Israeli flag and a Hebrew name in their bio certainly seem to think that I got my ass kicked. What's even more fascinating is that there'd be specific moments that people draw 180-degree opposite conclusions from. Like the one that I saw going super viral is him, asking me if I've ever been to Israel, and then
you haven't been there? You haven't been there?
Kind of putting on a performance about how shocked he is that I haven't been there. And it was interesting to me how different people could look at the exact same moment, and one group of people could say, oh, this was Dave getting destroyed. And the other group of people could say, I mean, like, objectively, this is a non-argument. This doesn't win you any points in a debate. Like, I obviously fall into the second group there, but it certainly does show you how dug in certain people are, of course, which I think is to be expected in this most of contentious issues. But yeah, I don't know exactly what to take from that, but much like in the last 5 years particularly, it does feel like people are living in different realities. And even if you were to ask people to tell the story of COVID, I mean, like, what just happened over the last 5 years with this global pandemic?
I think it goes back further than that. At least since the beginning of the Trump era, the bifurcated realities has been a real issue in the sense that just what he said, but we could look at the same thing. We could watch the same speech. We could see the same event. We can look at the same policy and somehow have completely opposite perspectives of what it is. And I think we're all guilty of that. I don't think that it's a matter of, oh, I have the right answer and you have the wrong answer all the time. Sometimes it definitely is. But yeah, I mean, it's been very difficult to have, centrist type ideals and want to want to find that middle ground because people aren't looking for it. People aren't looking for it. And guys, we do have the poll of who won the original JRE debate. Dave Smith, Douglas Murray, or I didn't watch it if you didn't watch it. But right now, Dave Smith is in the lead.
To tell the story of COVID. I mean, like, what just happened over the last 5 years with this global pandemic? It's amazing how much people could have completely diametrically opposed understandings of the reality we just lived through. Now, I'm not being a relativist here. I think one of those sides is wrong and the other one is right, but that is where we are.
Of course you're going to pick a side. Shout out to CT223. Welcome to the party. This guy, John Spencer's on. Piers Morgan here with Dave talking about the JRE debate and kind of getting into it themselves. Welcome to the party.
Funny enough, I would say the COVID debate is a lot more nuanced in reality than the two extremities take it, for what it's worth. But let's bring in John Spencer, because he certainly was not in the Dave Smith one camp. You tweeted, Dave Smith and Douglas Murray debated who qualifies as an expert and who should be making declarative statements about certain wars. That question answers itself. And that's being...
Does it though? Hey, shout out to our boy DV Viewerski with the $10 super chat. And guys, we got a fresh thing of treats. We got a fresh thing of treats here. And of course, every donation comes with a treat for Morty, and that makes you the new sponsor of the stream. Oh, do we? If you want to give up your sponsorship spot, we can definitely do that. Guys, say hello to the new sponsor of the stream, dropping dollar bills, y'all. Thank you so very, very much.
Should be making declarative statements about certain wars. That question answers itself, and that's being construed, John, to mean that you believe that Dave Smith was not the expert in the room. Explain why you felt that Dave Smith lost this debate.
This is going to be interesting. Why did Dave? So one of the issues with Douglas Murray was that we got off topic. So this is the question. Why do you feel that Dave Smith lost the debate? Pretty simple. I think he lost because XYZ.
Sure. I wouldn't say it had anything to do with Douglas. I would have to say it was the statements that Dave Smith made during the podcast, which highlight, and I won't get into the credentialism as Dave's quoting 4-star generals or who's an expert, who's not. I do research.
You will, though.
I think Dave tells jokes for a living. I had a problem with the statements he were.
So I'm not going to do credentialism, but here are my credentials and here are the lack of his.
Come on, man. I do research. I think Dave tells jokes for a living. I had a problem with the statements he made, and then how do you come to that conclusion, which really does get to the podcaster world versus other individuals on how did you come to that opinion or that declarative statement, like Israel is intentionally killing civilians. I mean, there's like 10 different ways you can do research. You can do comparative, case study. And I think this is what Douglas was saying. If you haven't been there, then how are you getting to your conclusion? You ethnographic, you can go there and do interviews in Gaza, like both Douglas and I have done with soldiers. What's going on? How are you doing it? You can do even historical archival data research. That's not what it appears that Dave does. And it seems to be more of a historical revisionism. Take a piece of data that you got and then tell a really convincing narrative on how you got to your conclusion. But as somebody who has students, I mean, correlation is not causation is that famous phrase. When that story is actually just a lot of correlation and inferences, how did you get to your conclusion? How do you do that research? Forget the expertise and the credentialism. You're making a statement like it's true. And I know Dave's anti-war, and that's great.
Well, no, he's making a claim as if it's his opinion, which is a valid opinion. Now, if you can say why his opinion is not valid, well, then we're getting somewhere, but yet to do that. Shout out to Guam Tech. Welcome to the party. This is John, what the hell is his name? Professor John Spencer, Executive Director of Urban Warfare Institute, here to show exactly why Douglas Murray won that debate, and Dave is just a child who has no idea what's going on. Welcome to the party. Yeah, you haven't been there. You haven't been there.
Expertise and the credentialism. You're making a statement like it's true, and I know Dave's anti-war, and that's great. But you can't be anti-factual. And Dave, without Douglas, just made a bunch of not true statements.
Such as?
Give some of the key examples of what you think were
care to share one?
Inaccurate.
And so, again, we're down this road of I have these things that you said that were wrong, and therefore you are wrong. Okay.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think the over one, which is what me and Dave were talking over X, is that Israel is intentionally killing civilians, especially children. That's not a factual statement at all, because it doesn't even include the base information. So it's almost like, you just don't know the information you need to know to make that judgment. And, let's forget comparing it to
you just don't get it. But maybe if you open up your heart one day, you will understand. I subconsciously, I was looking at him and something is off. His teeth are a weird shape, right? That is odd.
You just don't know the information you need to know to make that judgment. And, let's forget comparing it to a domestic situation like Dave continues to do on Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, others. Like, if somebody killed my kids and I know where he's at and I go to that apartment building and I kill everybody in it, that's murder. And that's what Israel is doing. And that's not true. Even you, Piers, have commented about Israel striking something and saying, look at the number of civilians. That's not acceptable. That's not how war works. It's not even how you would assess that situation, because it completely rules out what the law of war says about proportionality, about assessing what is the target, who is that individual, what's his value, concrete value. And then, which a lot of people leave out, is what precautions did Israel take, like we just saw recently, of calling everybody in the building saying, look, the terrorist is using this building for a military purpose.
So what is it that Dave got wrong?
You must leave. You must get out of this area, or all the other steps, these civilian harm mitigation measures. So that one's a really huge one, but there are other ones, like when Dave said that there are more children that have died in this war than any modern war. That's just, of course, Douglas called that out, but there was a whole list of them, from the blockade, from the occupation, like all of these things were just counterfactual and not a logic that leads to a conclusion, but he's really convincing. And that's what I have a problem with.
Just lay down.
All right, Dave, your response.
So basically nothing. He got a number wrong. That was corrected in the debate. Therefore, you lose.
What?
Okay.
Sure. Well, okay. I mean, I do think that like you do a lot of this, as Douglas did, a lot of this poisoning of the well stuff and saying you tell jokes and I do research, and you could say this isn't credentialism all you want to, but it's really a lot before you start taking on an actual argument. In fact, it wasn't until the follow-up.
And it was in the same sentence. I'm not going to go through all this credentialism, but I do research, and Dave just does jokes. As if somebody who tells jokes is incapable of understanding something so crazy of not kill babies. CD said, two elitists in a suit with Dave in a hoodie, who's probably going to do a funny bone club this weekend. Yet Dave is smarter and has more evidence ready to show. Bingo. It's just the facade of being the expert, giving you credit. That is gone. That is an old way of thinking, because we've seen, as we've been talking about, how bad certain experts are. So does that mean that we don't trust anyone because they are an expert? Of course not. But just having that title is not enough. You have to demonstrate that you have some expertise. I said, you're right, but these standards, you're wrong. Like, okay, yeah, such as?
All you want to, but it's really a lot before you start taking on an actual argument. In fact, it wasn't until the follow-up question that you pointed anything out. So
yeah, and Quality's saying, so Israel airstrikes leveling city blocks is not killing children, according to the experts.
The analogy that I'm making, and you know, as you were quoting me on Twitter the other day, I'm not saying that I'm not familiar, although I'm not claiming to have your level of expertise with international humanitarian law, or you can assert that war works a different way. I'm talking about something much more fundamental. What I'm saying is that Douglas is making the claim, and many others.
What is NCCV? TV said, Dave, like myself, has a low NCCV, 0. Israel has shocked many military analysis as to how high they might have set the value, the non-combatant casualty value. Gotcha. So they said they've shocked many military analysts as to how high they have set the value, meaning they are willing to kill non-combatants.
I'm talking about something much more fundamental. What I'm saying is that Douglas is making the claim, and many others are, that Israel's killing of civilians is unintentional. And I'm talking about a very basic philosophical concept of morality, of intentionality, and that by what people mean when they say intentional, that if this was done domestically, we would consider it intentional. The point is that war, yes, look, there's been the...
What do you mean? He just shook his head. Dave's going to explain it, but that is crazy. That is crazy. Right off rip.
Intentional. The point is that war, yes, look, there's been the Geneva Convention, there's international humanitarian law. It goes back to the mid-19th century, was codified into law after World War II. I think that's a good thing. I think it's a step in the right direction. But this is all a politician or a group of politicians declaring a word, and the fact that there are lines drawn on a map does not in any way magically transform morality or the basic philosophical concept of intent. And even in your example there, if I were to give out pamphlets, give out a warning, tell everybody I'd really like you to leave, and then they didn't, and I blew up a building, we would consider that intentional murder. Now, my point...
And that's what he shook his head no at before. So what is your response to that? That you can do that? I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not an expert, but I don't think you can.
And then they didn't, and I blew up a building, we would consider that intentional murder. Now, my point, I think a lot of times people object to almost what the implications of this way of looking at the world might be, but forget all of that for a second. I'm just talking about how human beings think about these things. And when you talk about an intentional killing, now, by the way, I should also...
Just intentional just means, did you anticipate on that happening? Or not anticipate? Did you mean for that to happen?
To stipulate that it's not as if that's the case in every single one of these strikes that Israel's taken. Sure. And we've gotten all types of evidence about this. And there's quite a number of cases, hundreds of cases, where they're waiting for terrorists to go back into a residential building and then attacking the building, suspected terrorists, I should say. But regardless, none of this is even really the point. The point is that on a very basic human level, and I would also think this is completely incompatible with Christianity, although I'm not trying to lecture anybody about that, but there is no micro and macro morality.
Oh, we'll go back over that again. There is no micro and macro morality. What is wrong, and changing words around doesn't change the actions. TV said, I'm intentionally neutral on the Israel-Palestine thing. The number is objectively high. This is not helping them. Murray has added to this damage. And I think that you're absolutely right. There is, especially these days, an aspect, and they're going to talk a lot about it, but an aspect of the PR war where, you know, it used to be just whatever CNN would put on TV, which, you know, at least as of Vietnam was shocking. But now we have, you know, cell phone videos and stuff. And I think downplaying maybe the wrong word, but not acknowledging that that is wrong. It really doesn't seem like they even think it's wrong. Like, not that there's a proportional, that it is a response and it's wrong, but just like, no, this is what we do. CTC went deep on the on Israel on this channel years ago. Almost for a month, we debated these topics. The fact that we as a society are still debating is crazy. Hamas puts people in buildings, they get blown up. Yeah, and I mean, we have been talking about this for you know the last year or so. I don't remember. Was it 2022? I don't know. Anyway, for a while. But the conflict itself, when you think about how far the conflict itself goes back, I mean, what are we doing? And that's why I'm with TV. I try to stay as neutral as possible because it seems like two groups of people that want to fight each other that has nothing to do with me, except for the fact that they've roped in my government, my tax money into the conflict. Like I said, I love Dave, but my question to him is the same as a lot of wokies at this point. What would you do differently? I think the answer lies somewhere in diplomacy, and I don't think, I certainly don't, you know, have the answer to that. But I do think that even if Dave didn't have a direct answer to that, I don't necessarily think that that's a fair criticism of the position that he's taking. It's a fair follow-up. But to establish, no, they are intentionally killing children. Full stop. What would you do differently is a fantastic conversation to have there. But we can't have that conversation until we acknowledge that what we're doing needs to change. What they're doing, rather. CD said, Israel has leveled the Gaza Strip. Like it's completely leveled. War's a bitch.
Well, I'm not trying to lecture
Try to end it, and that won't happen.
That, but there is no micro and macro morality. There is no micro and macro intentionality. These are human concepts. And if you are dropping a bomb and you know that there are women and children on the receiving end of that bomb, then that was done intentionally. And I think this is the reality of war. And I think if we're going to have a conversation about this, we should deal with it in reality.
And, you know, to tie bow on what Contact just said, exactly. I think that in order to determine what we do differently, then we have to first acknowledge what's wrong with what we're doing or what's being done. I keep saying we know Douglas Murray hates that, but what is wrong with what's being done is a necessary step before we can get to what do we do differently. Soundwave said, if the qualification was you need to have the solutions to talk about it, then every expert would be out because it hasn't been solved yet. And this is a similar type of thing where, shout out to Indie Film, where we're talking about cosmology and theoretical physics and, you know, talking about dark matter and the Big Bang and stuff that, you know, saying certain aspects of these theories don't make sense because we don't understand what dark matter is. Like, okay, but fair. But exactly what Sam was saying. Just because you don't have the solution doesn't mean we can't acknowledge a problem. Dude says the problem goes away, the job of expert goes away, and we can't have that. We need our experts. Yep, yeah, qualities are. I mean, I can't say that on here, but. Too many people not seeing human beings in this conflict. Clean that up for you.
Reality of war. And I think if we're going to have a conversation about this, we should deal with it in reality.
Yeah, and also, John, I'll get you to respond to that. But I mean, it just seems to me, having done so many debates about this since October the 7th, I've never disputed that Israel had a right to defend itself. In fact, a duty to defend itself and its people from any further attacks of that magnitude, given how horrific it was. So let me just restate that again. But there's a kind of unique battlefield in Gaza. I would argue, and maybe you would argue differently, that you've got 2 million people, 50% of whom are under 18. And that the enemy are all living in civilian areas amongst the civilians. So you have a kind of horrific battleground, if you like, to attack if you're Israel, in the sense that...
Hold on 1 second here. Let me just do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Okay, and we're good. Sorry about that.
Horrific battleground, if you like, to attack if you're Israel, in the sense that you can only constantly kill a lot of civilians, including children, if you go after the enemy in those civilian areas. And that's exactly what's happened. And I can't think of a similar war, and maybe you can, you're more experienced at this, I accept, than I am, but can you think of another scenario where the proportion of children that is in the attack zone has been at 50% or higher, and therefore we're seeing so many children being killed?
That is a tough one. While we ponder that, let's check this out. If you guys are enjoying... Oh, come on. Hold on.
So
if you guys are enjoying the show,
the case study.
Oh my God.
You could do the research on how does this compare to anything else, and it doesn't.
Super smooth, super smooth in the building. All right. If you guys are enjoying the show, the party rages on 24/7 over in our Discord. The link is pinned to the top of the chat and is absolutely free to join 24/7. We're in there hanging out, having a great time. And guys, it is absolutely free. However, if you are a member of this channel here on YouTube, you can scroll right below that video and hit that join button. Starts at $2.99. There's a few different tiers, but $2.99 will get you in. It gets you members only live streams here on YouTube, all that other good stuff. But it opens up the full Discord server. So we've got the free chat that is open to anyone. Anybody can join and talk. But as you can see, that is just one of our channels. There's a bunch of different channels here, including our disciple chat for members only, our word of the day watch party, where we're talking about all this stuff. And of course, we have the voice channel here, where we are hanging out at this moment. Shout out to everybody in the Discord server. Say hello and tell them to come and join.
Hello, come and join.
There you go, guys. Simple as that. See you there. All right. Definitely check it out, guys. All right, diving back in.
Look, yeah, that's the case study or comparative model that you could do the research on. How does this compare to anything else? And it doesn't, right? The 20 years of preparing Gaza for war, the 400 miles of tunnels, the human sacrifice strategy, because both sides actually have legal obligations. And when Hamas says...
I'm going to slow him down a little bit because he's a little bit chattier than this.
How does this compare to anything else? And it doesn't, right? The 20 years of preparing Gaza for war, the 400 miles of tunnels, the human sacrifice strategy, because both sides actually have legal obligations. And when Hamas says, I need the death of my women and children, that's not right. So
so we do have an established right and wrong in this guy's perspective. And yeah, 2000-year holy war. And I mean, if I did believe in a God, I certainly would agree that this would not be sanctioned. Shout out to Indy and Lana.
I need the death of my women and children. That's not right. Mm-hmm. So the data about what is the population. So one, I don't want to be heartless about it. And every death of a child is terrible. But you're evaluating anybody who's below the 18 as a child, as in that Hamas has basically charged. I joined the military at 17. Am I a child? And Hamas deploys. The average age of a Hamas recruit right now is 16 and a half. We've seen them put weapons in hands of very young children. You have combatant and you have non-combatant. Is there any comparable status to the demographic of Gaza? No. Is there any comparison to where another country, Egypt, refuses to let even those that want out from the combat area?
So what was it that Dave said that was wrong in the debate?
Another country, Egypt, refuses to let even those that want out from the combat areas. And Israel, who took weeks to evacuate the civilians from the areas they're going into. So absolutely, there are so many here. But back to Dave's comment, which it stands on itself, explaining what he doesn't know about war or the laws of war, about them being codified and when they went into effect. Or this is a simple question of morality that war should be no killing of civilians.
You see the semantic obfuscation. There should be no killing of civilians. I mean, yes, that would be ideal. That would be ideal. But who's proposing that? Straw man.
Explaining what he doesn't know about war or the laws of war, about them being codified and when they went into effect, or this is a simple question of morality that war should be no killing of civilians. That should be it. You two military should go find your place to fight and just have it out. That's not the history of war from the creation, literally, of city-states going out.
I would be like, fine, okay, I'm, just put aside the fact that I never said that. Are you saying that if we could have a war where there was no civilian casualties, that would be a bad thing? Is that what you're saying, Johnny?
That's not the history of war from the creation, literally, of city-states going out and everything.
Again, I think
you want to get into the frameworks to judge. No, the frameworks to judge war. We as societies, all the societies of war, the Geneva Conventions is one example, have decided here are the boundaries of brutality of war. Like we don't bomb innocent civilians. And you cannot say, I don't care what your Haaretz articles say, you're not going to show me that Israel has targeted civilians, intentionally killing civilians. When I can show you measures that Israel has taken that no military in the history of war have taken to get civilians out of harm's way so they can target that terrorist. You once said on a—
So they do blow up civilians, but just not as many civilians as Hamas does. That makes it okay, according to John Spencer.
Have taken to get civilians out of harm's way.
Actually, yeah, hear that full sentence.
That Israel has taken that no military in the history of war have taken to get civilians out of harm's way so they can target that terrorist. You once said on a podcast.
No other military has tried so hard to not bomb civilians and still bomb them. That's the point. You're trying to gloss over the point. That they know that civilians are there. They can't try to minimize the number of civilians if they don't know that civilians are there. Shout out to Boggs. Welcome to the party. Very good to see ya. So Dave 1, sub for the reaction. I don't expect to blow up like that. You didn't expect it to what? Also, Michael Malice just put out his interview with Doug, which was right before the so I was watching that. I don't know if you checked the Discord, but I was like, oh man, I was so excited because I saw that it was premiering, and I was watching this, and then I was gonna compare with that, but then he's like, Michael Malice, just so you guys know, this was before the debate. I was like, nah, we're good. Welcome to the party.
To get civilians out of harm's way so they can target that terrorist. You once said on a podcast, if the terrorist is holding a baby and shooting at you, then of course you can kill the terrorist. And unfortunately, what they're doing is wrong. But then I understand that when we have cases of Hamas doing that, holding children so nobody will shoot at them, or going underneath a hospital, a school, a mosque, doing what we call lawfare. You have to have an understanding of the evolutions of the law of war, how it is adjudicated. When you say evidence, I mean evidence, not TikTok videos. I mean actual evidence.
He's so condescending. I love seeing, even if it's somebody I disagree with, I love seeing somebody just dominate a conversation when they've earned it. Somebody's come in good faith and the other person's being a dick or whatever, talking bullshit, completely wrong about whatever. And the person has tried to be good faith and just explain their position, whatever. And the other person doesn't take it. This guy has started the conversation like that. What we're talking about with Douglas Murray, starting the conversation being like, I don't think you guys are good enough. You're basically stupid. Like, who taught you how to talk to people? That's one thing you are certainly not an expert in. TD said, what none of these neocons talk about is Hamas was funded by Israel to fight the PLO. Dave Smith talks about this. Yep, that's something. Shh, they don't want you to remember that. They don't want you to remember that. They created Hamas to create an internal coup. Then spin off like this is evidence. The bullshit class, the elite class.
Evidence of what did the person dropping the commander know? What did he do to prevent it? What time did he do it? What type of munition did he use? Dave's statement, stand on his own, of showing that he doesn't know the foundations of war, even if it's what you call a just war, execution of the war. You're just not communicating that you know enough to make a statement like that. I'm just philosophically talking about killing civilians is wrong. That's what the law of war says. It says don't target civilians.
So it's wrong. It's wrong because that's what the law says. It's wrong to kill civilians. Why is it wrong to kill civilians? Because that's what the law says. You sure you want to go down that road, bro? I don't think that's going to work for you.
About killing civilians is wrong. That's what the law of war says. It says don't target civilians.
Yeah.
What Hamas did on October 7th. It doesn't say 0 civilians will die in a war. There's a precaution law of war. There is the feasible things you do to prevent the
So the false dichotomy that Johnny Boy is setting up here is that either you intentionally kill civilians or you expect some idealistic version of war where absolutely no civilians die. How about you just don't intentionally, which was Dave's original point, intentionally kill them? And if there's collateral damage, yeah, war is shitty. But no. And again, the false dichotomy, either this or that. And that's not the situation. There's a third option.
There's a precaution law of war. There is the feasible things you do to prevent the civilian death.
Yep, absolutely right, Box.
But you can't say Israel hasn't done that. And I'm saying, based on my research, not an appeal to expertise, going there, interviewing IDF soldiers, commanders, Netanyahu himself, I'm saying Israel is not targeting or intentionally trying to kill civilians. They're doing the opposite more than anybody else.
They're doing the opposite of intentionally trying to kill people. Then they're doing a really bad job. They deem civilians a cost of war because Hamas set up in the basement to a hospital. And like, as I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but and Dave's point here really boils down to, yeah, we all know that. All we're trying to establish is that it's not good to intentionally kill these people. If you're going to say, to go back to Guamtek's question of what else would you do? Well, okay, there is nothing else we can do. But we still acknowledge that this is wrong. We're just doing it to stop a larger and worse wrong.
Not targeting or intentionally trying to kill civilians. They're doing the opposite more than anybody else.
Okay.
Okay.
Again,
I mean, Dave, that last point, that last point John made, and obviously respond to everything he said, but the last point.
Yeah, well, fuck you, Brits up.
Point about he's been there. One of Douglas Murray's attack lines with you was that unlike him, who regularly goes to Israel, he regularly goes to Ukraine, you don't go to these places that you then opine on.
How dare you?
I said, so this fuckstick thinks that Hamas is running around using babies as body armor? Aren't they? Are they not? I thought that was common knowledge, no? But said, so Hamas Health Ministry gives us the number of dead, which we don't trust. They never count the combatants, only women and children, and the women ain't innocent either. Well, I mean, based on the laws, then unless they're fighting, unless they're combatants, then innocence is not really what we're talking about here. Are you engaged in this conflict or are you not? You could be guilty of, identity fraud all you want, but you know what I mean? Shout out to Liberty Plus TV. Welcome to the party. If anyone thinks Douglas won the debate is literally retarded, I don't know. We got somebody. Love to Eat was definitely saying, where is it? Definitely saying that from what I saw, Amari crushed Abe. So I'm hoping to change some minds, but we will see. We will see. Welcome to the party, brother.
Israel regularly goes to Ukraine. You don't go to these places that you then opine on. Personally, I don't think you need to go to the sun to know it's hot. But a lot of people agree with Douglas Murray and say,
"But have you been?"
Yeah, actually, he's right. If you don't actually go, how can you really know what you're talking about? And John's
this is an important point as well. Box said, if a 12-year-old picks up a gun in a war, they become a military-age combatant. It just is what it is. War is shitty, but it doesn't have to be as shitty as possible just because war is already shitty.
Actually, he's right. If you don't actually go, how can you really know what you're talking about? And John's kind of inferring that as well. What do you say to that?
No, Piers, I'm not inferring that you have to go there. I'm saying what research methodology are you using? If you're not doing the interviews of people involved in the actions, if you're not collecting data in a certain way, which you can get from going there, you can do ethnographic research by interviewing the people involved in the execution. I am not saying that straw man of, well, Dave not been there, so he can't talk. If
You kind of are, though, because you're saying that by going there and talking to the people that you'll have a better understanding of what the governments are doing, which I absolutely agree with. But you don't need to talk to the people in order to understand the government. I mean, we've seen video after video after video after video after video of man on the street interviews, and Americans don't know jack shit about America. So yes, if you're not American and you come to America and you talk to people, you will have a better understanding of the country. But you don't have to meet an American person to understand the acts of the U.S. government. So you said, I really hate being anti-Israel has become anti-American or anti-conservatism or anti-Semitic. Mossad ran Epstein. Mossad has assassinated so many people. Israel is corrupt. Absolutely. And I completely agree with you, because I don't like the wokeness that I see around the anti-Israel stuff. There's a lot of it, and a lot of, the Jews this, the Jews that, and the Jews that. That's woke bullshit. But that doesn't mean that Israel is a good, or at least the interaction that we have with them. That doesn't mean it's good for us. And we should be able to discuss that without being shoved into a box like the wokies do. He said, I think Douglas could have even won. He started out telling them they were dumb and calling them names. Yep. And I mean, if they were going to actually talk about the conflicts, again, that stuff is over my head. And that's why I was so excited to see that, to get, I trust Dave a lot on this stuff, but I do want to see him challenged by somebody who can actually challenge him so that I can see how far should I trust Dave. But nobody's willing to do it. Nobody's willing to do it. Like you said, there's no reason to think Douglas could win, considering Dave has wrecked multiple pro-Israel talking heads. I mean, I think to a certain level, there is your personal perspective. And so there's not a right and wrong answer on pro-Israel or pro-Palestine, there's not a right answer in that sense. So you could make a stronger case for your side than the other person has for their side, and you win the debate in that way without convincing people who already agree with the other side. You could present your own arguments and do well, but he just didn't. Shout out to Zippy, the SM Lee. Welcome to the party. Very good to see you, sir. It's kind of crazy how the left went from being pretty much atheist to loving Islam over Judaism. It's almost like it's a psyop. You don't say. When you stand for nothing, you fall for anything.
in the execution, I'm not saying that straw man of, well, Dave not been there, so he can't talk. If Dave did research, then absolutely. If Dave didn't have giant logical holes in what he's saying, like about the blockade or about the bombing or things like this, then you don't have to go there. There are many ways to do research.
Then what though? But because again, the issue was not that he was wrong. The issue was that he was saying his opinion. That was the original issue.
I'm saying Dave doesn't do that.
Okay, so I'll say this. It's both. I feel like both in this debate and in the debate with Douglas Murray, it almost kind of feels like the analogy I'd use is like if two fighters agreed to fight. You know, two guys in the UFC, they agree to fight, and so they show up under the lights, and you get into the cage, and I put my hands up, and then the other guy puts his hands down and starts telling me what a better fighter he is than me. And you're like, okay, well then let's do it.
Let's do it. And so if there is. What is happening? Oh, that's our Swole Street music if we hit that swoggle. But we may or may not get to the podcast that Dave did yesterday or today. He did a different podcast where he was directly going over clips of the debate. He did another podcast episode after that, which I hope to get to. But so let's just watch what we've got here.
If you believe in morality and if you believe in logic, which you essentially have to. There's no getting around believing in logic. But like inherently, by their very nature, if you believe in morality and you accept logic, logic and morality cannot be altered by social constructs, right?
You know, like being trans doesn't change your rights.
Like there's just no way you can't, there's nothing that we could decide. Like if you, let's say like basic logic, right? Like the law of non-contradiction. Okay. So if I were to say to you, I do not exist.
What?
What's the problem with that statement? Well, it's a self-detonating statement. It's a contradiction. You said the word I, and then you claim you didn't exist. You acknowledged what you were, and then it said you didn't exist. So that assertion falls apart because it's logically incoherent. It's contradictory, okay? Now, people cannot get together and say, let's have a vote on whether a self-contradicting statement is logically sound.
It is what it is.
It doesn't matter if I say, well, no, I'm going to call you senator, and I'm going to call you president, and I'm going to call you, Supreme Court justice. And you guys get to say that the rules of logic are different now. Like, if anyone were to ever propose that, you'd immediately go like, no, you're misunderstanding how logic works. You're misunderstanding how government works. A social construct cannot change things that are objective reality.
Like being racist. If you're black, being racist doesn't change because you're black.
Like, you don't get to do that any more than we get to hold like a referendum on gravity. It doesn't matter how you vote. Like, gravity exists regardless. Okay. So if you understand that, like, definitionally, you cannot, there is no such thing, as I said on Piers Morgan the other day, as macro and micro morality. You can't say like it would be immoral to do it here, but it's moral to do it there, any more than you could say like, raping someone or murdering someone is immoral in North America, but it's morally accepted in sub-Saharan Africa. Like, that just doesn't make any sense. It's a contradiction. These things are, if you believe in morality, then by its very nature, it has to transcend all of these things, right? And particularly if you're a religious person who believes in morality, then like if God is judging us based on what we do morally, it doesn't make any sense that God would go, unless you guys get together and form an organization, and then it's totally different. And obviously, I think this has something to do with the kind of the religion of statism, which is just
the religion of statism. It's almost like people are geared towards religion if they don't have an alternative. And once they understand the problems with the religion that they grew up with, they're going to fill that hole with some other thing. And if we don't have a moral, secular structure there for those people, then you're going to get the religion of statism.
The religion of statism, which is just, there's really no other way to describe it. I know I'm going back to my libertarian roots on this one, but that really is it. I mean, if any other organization were to get together, if Walmart was just like, well, we can murder people. Like, because we're Walmart. Obviously, you can't do it, but we can do it because we're Walmart. I mean, we're this great big company. Everybody would see through that immediately as just being preposterous. Like, obviously, that's not, no, you're just doing the same thing. You're just a bigger organization. Yet somehow when governments get involved, because people in their head have this like weird concept of what governments are.
Does anyone know what app that is to have the, to get a long form video of a short for, or off of a video like that and it follows? You see what I mean? Where
because people in their
head
moves
like that
weird concept of what governments are. I mean, myself included, I'm guilty of this, but we will constantly use, as Douglas Murray called me out for doing kind of, although he didn't mean it like this, we'll say we invaded Iraq, right? Like we did that. But we didn't, like a bunch of criminals in DC did. It's not us, but you think of like the nation and the nation state almost as being the same thing. That's us. That's America. But when we're talking about the government, we're not talking about America. We're not talking about the hills or the roads or the people or the tradition or the culture or any of that. Typically, you're talking about the most corrupt members of our society who hold political power. And so with that kind of in mind as the backdrop, what I had said on Joe Rogan's podcast, and by the way, people who listen to the show know I've been saying this stuff for years. It's just I happen to say it on a big platform in a big debate. But it was specifically arguing with Douglas Murray over the term intentional, because he said Israel is unintentionally killing civilians. And I was like, no, that's bullshit. And in the same sense that if you the example I used, which I've used many times before, but if somebody broke into your property and killed a few of your family members and then went back to their house and you tracked them back to their house and then you just blew up the building, and you went, hey, no, we didn't mean to kill all those other people in the building. I mean, we knew they were there. We knew they would die as a result of us blowing up this building, but we just wanted to get that bad guy. The others were like collateral damage. Well, like in any domestic situation, obviously, that you'd be charged with first-degree murder. But I'm not making an appeal to the law. I'm saying that morally speaking, as human beings, we would all go, no, that is intentional. I don't get to just say it's not intentional. If you knew there were women and children who were going to die as a result of this and you did it anyway, then you did it intentionally. Okay, so the essence of the point is that the concept of intentionality doesn't change because a government's doing it and because it's being done in another country.
Yeah, that's basically it. And Claudia said, Dave is so silly, thinking the rules of war, of the magic, excuse me, thinking that the magic of war doesn't change the rules. What a stupid man. So our boy John Spencer retweeted this and said, "Dear Lord, Dave Smith thinks he's the first person to critically think about the morality of war. I will give Dave credit in saying, let me get a little more. I'll give Dave credit in saying there seems to be two realities here, his and reality. Strawman yet again. Dave wants to throw out the entire body and thought of unjust war theory, both the philosophical, legal, and legal framework, excuse me, that evaluates the morality of warfare from when to go to war, just ad bellum, and how war must be conducted ethically. And he thinks no one else has asked these questions before. I don't know. Oh, not Theodices, Thomas Aquinas, or any other voice until his. Again, strawman. Then he fails to accept the fact that the legal framework, again, he said not talking legally, refuses to accept the legal framework inherently reflects moral considerations by translating imperatives into binding rules that regulate how wars are fought, regardless of whether the war itself is deemed just. So the actions of this unjust war are just because we said so. So Dave responds, this is like arguing with an Aztec high priest about the morality of child sacrifice. He has no response to my obvious point, so he has to lie, insult, and assert there is a doctrine. The moral considerations have already been addressed. Anything but address the reality of the internationally or intentionally killing children. So I want to get to that clip. That is from the podcast that I'm talking about. We may or may not get there, but I did want to see that point. And where did I fell off with you guys? TV Bierski said, I'm telling you, this guy's a vampire. I bet there are no pictures of him younger. You never know. You never know. The reptilians, the vampires, they're all coming for us. King said, fella is acting as smug as Murray. It's almost like there's a through line with this expert class, which is more tolerable when you are delivering something. Yep. Zippy said, I think Israel is more in the right because warlords are never going to be able to build a damn thing but slavery and chaos. Whose morals? Morality changes over time like religion. Bingo. Bucks, I'll even put up with slow talkers if you're dropping knowledge bombs. The opposite of that would be Norm Finkelstein. Yikes. Shout out to Matthew King. Welcome to the party. Said, my stance is I do not care what happens over there as long as we stop funding and inserting ourselves in it. Bingo. Completely agree. He just said it's a bunch of criminals in DC. That's why I love Dave. Exactly. What else we got here? Yeah, very, very, very true. All right, let's dive right back in. I don't know. We'll have to talk about it. We'll see. But let's dive back in here. Oh my God.
Fighters agreed to fight. You know, two guys in the UFC, they agree to fight. And so they show up under the lights and you get into the cage and I put my hands up and then the other guy puts his hands down and starts telling me what a better fighter he is than me.
Yep, exactly, man. Conflating legal and ethical or moral.
And you're like, okay, well then let's do it. Like, I don't know. Let's have the conversation. Like, instead of all this time just telling me you're an expert. Hold on. Wait, 1 second. Let me finish my point since you had some time to talk there.
So now we're talking about, earning that blood sportiness. So, they both came in relatively calm, even though Spencer was being a bit of a dick in terms of, the tone of their voice. But now, Dave was quiet while Spencer was dispensing his bullshit. And now he has the goodwill to be like, yo, hey, shut the fuck up while I'm talking, bitch.
Telling me you're an expert. Hold on. Wait, 1 second. Let me finish my point since you had some time to talk there. Look, all of this stuff about like whether you have to be there. By the way, it's going viral online, but there's this great clip of Douglas Murray taking apart the lived experience argument from the left and making.
Can somebody find that? If somebody can find that, I would absolutely love to see that. Shout out to Fartnock Life. Welcome to the party. So do you do debates here? Goddamn right I do. If you're interested, check out Sarah the Raging Tomato. She moderates a lot of cool debates. You'll be great. we have been doing that, and I've already set aside tomorrow to try to get on that panel. So you are in the right place, saying the right things. Welcome to the party. Contact said you're definitely gonna have to get some requests from the audience for that one. Very true. Very, very true. All right.
Great clip of Douglas Murray taking apart the lived experience arguments from the left and making all these points about how people who were never in the Holocaust have written much more beautifully and accurate about the Holocaust than people who actually went through it themselves.
Damn YouTube.
If you want to say that you gain some, if you want to say you have expertise, or you want to say going there gives you some more expertise, then sure. I mean, I wouldn't argue that. No one's arguing that you can't learn about a place from going there. But again, this is the fighter putting his hands down and going, I've trained so much harder than you. I'm such a better boxer than you. You could never hang with me. It's like, okay, so let's get it going. Anyway, in terms of, by the way, there is absolutely no chance, and I haven't examined Douglas Murray's passport, but there's no chance that he's not a hypocrite on this issue. I guarantee he has not been to all of the places that he's commented on. I don't know. He's commented on every foreign country and what's going on geopolitically for 20 years. I'm sure he hasn't visited all of those places. Back to the point, because it seems like in these things we do everything except actually debate the issue. You missed my entire point. Once you're appealing to the law or appealing to how warfare actually works, you're missing the entire point that I was making. My point is that this is not how the law works, and this is not how war actually works. I'm making a much more basic human point.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. What, I mean, vampire. What is this? What is this? What are we doing? What are we doing? I don't have the best teeth. I'm not. I mean, they look straight and what? But that's weird. That's weird.
A fundamental point. Look, Piers, the other day, okay, this is, and by the way, if you don't want to believe this story, it's fine. It's just one firsthand account from Gaza. But whether it's true or not, and there's no reason to suspect it's not true, but whether it's true or not, there's just been hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of examples like this. So there was
it all boils down to, do you want to fix the problem or continue the chaos and strife? And unfortunately, I think we know exactly the answer to that. Andy said, you can beat Dave in a debate if you're willing to admit Palestinians are others and you don't see any of them as innocent. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? I mean, I hope so, because that's his natural look. He is definitely a vampire.
But whether it's true or not, there's just been hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of examples like this. So there was a woman, a building collapsed. She says, as she's walking down the building, she can hear the little kids, not 16-year-old members of Hamas. You're talking 4 and 5-year-olds screaming for their mothers while they're buried underneath the rubble, screaming for help from their mommy. And you know what, Piers? No help is coming because there's no bulldozers in Gaza. Nobody's coming to get those kids out. This is the reality of war. And this is what I'm trying. This is the main point that I was trying to make. All
right. So let's see, again, a big focus when these debates or discussion, whatever you call it, when they go off the rails, is to bring it back to center. You'll see oftentimes if I'm debating somebody, then they're talking about something else, or I ask a question and they go in front of me. So I'm like, okay, you just finish whatever you're saying, and then I'll just ask you the question again when you're done. Stay on target.
To Douglas Murray, which he kept running away from. If you're going to say that our goal here is to degrade Hamas, Murray conceded you probably can't eliminate them, but he feels like you can degrade them. If you're going to degrade Hamas, and the cost of it is those little children dying under rubble, screaming for their mother as their bones are crushed and no one's coming to help them, then fine. But at least say that you find that price acceptable. And
exactly. Stand on business. Say, we have to do this because it will be worse if we don't. We understand how bad this is. Stop saying it's not bad because X, Y, and Z.
Help them. Dying under rubble, screaming for their mother as their bones are crushed and no one's coming to help them. Then fine. But at least say that you find that price acceptable. And then we could have a real conversation about why people are going to view you as a monster and why the other side will never stop fighting and will always be against you. Because I could tell you for sure, if that was my kids, and I know, Piers, if those were your kids as well, you wouldn't want to hear anything about how, well, we've codified in international law that this is the norm of the way wars are allowed to be fought.
Oh, hell
nope.
no.
Assuming this is for me, as Zippy said, the only fix I can think of to fix the problem, Israel takes over the whole region. The UN does police work. The warlords and cartels are simply put down no matter the cost. I mean, yeah, it sounds like a strong push, but again, we need to find a reason for these people to be incentivized to end the war instead of continue the chaos.
Anything about how, well, we've codified in international law that this is the norm of the way wars are allowed to be fought versus not allowed to be fought. I'm making a very human point that this is the reality of war. And you can say under international humanitarian law, it's not considered intentional. We would consider this an intentional act in any other area. That's the point. It's a
you may have a legal distinction of intentional based on your laws. That's just not what Dave is saying. He's just saying you meant to do it. You meant to do it. That's it. That's the problem with these elitist experts. They know what they know so well, but they don't actually know how to think. They just regurgitate everything that has been taught to them. And I'm, painting with a broad brush here. But the ones that we have an issue with, that's why. There's this hubris of, oh, I know this one thing so well. Do you though? Or do you just know what other people taught you?
We would consider this an intentional act in any other area. That's the point. It's a very basic human point that if anyone were to do this domestically and then tried to use the defense of like, no, but I dropped a leaflet. No, I didn't really want to kill them. I just wanted to kill them. We'd go, I don't care. You blew up a building knowing there were kids in there.
I don't know how you could disagree with that. I don't understand how you could disagree with that. If you intentionally blow up a building, knowing there's people in there, what is the argument? What is the argument? Yep. Elitist experts, expert at snipping forts. So he said, that's it. Name a first world country that would allow insurgents to invade on the regular. While South America cartels invade the U.S. is not on the same level. It's bad, but it's not the same thing.
I didn't really want to kill them. I just wanted to kill them. We'd go, I don't care. You blew up a building knowing there were kids in there. That's the essence of this whole thing. And there's no amount, there's no amount of expertise that can really get you away from this basic fundamental moral logic.
The next thing, okay, fine. Source? What's your source on that then?
Let me ask you a difficult. Hang on, John. I will come to you. I just want to.
Guys, if you are new here, please do hit that subscribe. I am live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, and sometimes whenever I feel like it, dropping videos almost every single day. So definitely don't only subscribe, but ring the bell to never miss an Indian Jesus live party ever again.
I was to ask you, let's go back to the end of World War II. And the dropping of 2 atomic bombs in Japan, which obviously caused huge loss of life. And I imagine by your criteria, that was a deliberate targeting of civilians. The argument in favor of doing it was that it brought, it brought an end to World War II and potentially saved millions more lives from being taken. In other words, there's your moral argument right there, is that you do this to stop this, that you take this number of lives to stop many more lives being killed. I mean, when you look at that, for example, what's your view of that moral debate?
So, okay, well, first of all, just on the specifics, and we have talked about this before, but I tend to agree with 5-star General Dwight D. Eisenhower that it was unnecessary and wrong for us to drop the nuclear weapons. But regardless of that, even if 5-star General Eisenhower is wrong about that, and the other generals who supported it were right, this is exactly the point, Piers, is that when you start to think about war for what it actually is, what the overwhelming onus becomes clear. And the onus is on you to demonstrate that we absolutely have to do this. Bingo. That the standard for war, when you're talking about intentionally killing innocent civilians, the standard ought to be, the burden should always be on you to demonstrate that we absolutely have to do this.
And that's the key word, the burden. The burden of proof is on you. I am allowed to sit back and say, you're killing innocent people. I don't know. That's a good idea. If you're saying, no, we need to do this, then it's your responsibility to convince me of that. Or if not me personally necessarily, but to lay that out enough so that we as the American people can get behind it.
Know this is horrible. I know what the result of this is, but that we have to do this because so much more human suffering would come from us not doing this. And this is, to me, the essence of the point of why I talk about war in this way, is that because if you don't think about it this way, it ends up being very easy to find other justifications, justifications like Hamas must go. Hamas must go. It's like, whoa, hold on, wait a second.
And this is in any industry. Whenever you're doing your job, it becomes your job. It becomes work. And so it is almost, I would imagine that it's almost impossible to be somebody like a John Spencer here and not be able to detach yourself from the realities of what Dave is referring to. Because then how could you continue doing your work? You would cry yourself to sleep at night and wake up with night terrors. A shout out to Zippy DSM Lee over with the Rumble Rant. Thank you so very, very much. And of course, a treat for Morty. Very much appreciated. Said the land war would have been much worse with the nukes. The nukes allowed Japan to recover much faster. We had to do it because it would have been worse. That's exactly the point. Did you put that over here? No. All right, we'll just get that one. But yeah, exactly. And so there was a reason. And we can still say, okay, I don't like that. I didn't want to do that. I wish we didn't do that. It would have been better if we didn't do that based on X, Y, and Z. But at least then the conversation is on the table. It's not a given. It's not a given that you just eliminate people.
Justifications like Hamas must go. Hamas must go. It's like, whoa, hold on, wait a second. I kind of think Hamas must go. I kind of think the Likud party must go. I definitely think Kim Jong-un must go. I kind of think Vladimir Putin must go. But that's not the standard for whether or not we're justified to just start slaughtering innocent people in the hope of achieving that end.
And again, what are you shaking your head at? What is he saying? Of course, we won't hear it because he won't address it. But what is he saying that you don't agree with?
We're justified to just start slaughtering innocent people in the hope of achieving that end. What the standard ought to be is simply, do you absolutely have to do this, or there will be more human suffering? That should be the standard. And in the case of Israel-Gaza, I think that entirely changes the scope of things, because look, as all of us know, right? Gaza was, before October 7th, the most surveilled area in the world. Israel is the fortress of the world. It was a monumental failure of both policy and security for October 7th to have happened in the first place. And it's just not the case that there's going to be October 7th after October 7th if Israel just stops now and leaves Gaza in the rubble mess that it is.
He said Gaza. This guy's no expert. Why should I listen to anything that he said? He think it's Gaza.
So that's exactly, like, I'm not object. I get your point, Piers, because you're almost going, wait, but if we follow this logic, then when could we ever fight a war? And essentially,
when it's justified to stop worse things from happening.
My point is that, yeah, the onus should be on anybody who wants to fight a war ever. The onus should be on them to demonstrate that it is absolutely necessary and that there's nothing else we could do in this situation.
And again, shaking that. No, we shouldn't have to justify anything to what? You a comedian? What are you, an American voter? Are you a citizen? Yeah. Zippy said, again, Japan had wooden houses between mass bombings and going house to house. There would be no Japan left. So what you're saying is they should thank us for nuking them. They should thank us. What the fuck was I just gonna do? So I don't know if this is specifically what Dave was talking about, but let's see. So you're saying that is the volume down on that? Dave was saying that Douglas has essentially said that people who are not in the Holocaust wrote more. I don't know. Let's see.
This is such an important clip of Douglas Murray explaining the Nazi connection with Arab hostility to Israel.
This is Jew TV, Jesus Christ.
People have this impression that it's like Israel and the Jews come along, colonize the area, and so of course the Arabs are upset. No. The root of this conflict is a religious, Nazi-like anti-Semitic hatred that exists in the Arab world that was imported by the first Palestinian leader, quote unquote, really the leader of the Arabs in British Mandate Palestine, the Mufti, who actively collaborated with the Nazis and wanted to bring their plan into Palestine to kill the Jews, British Mandate Palestine. Have a watch of this clip of Douglas explaining in a brilliant interview with Trigonometry. You can watch the full thing on their channel.
And you have a particular theory for this, which I find quite interesting. In the book, you told about the meeting, I think it was in late 1930s, early 1940s, between the Grand Mufti and Adolf Hitler.
Well, it's it's a matter of historical record that the Muslim world is the only part of the world where after World War II, a leader who participated in the Holocaust returned to his home a hero. After the end of World War II, the Nazi leaders in Europe were either hanged or slid away to South America like rats. And that's why I say, I mean, like on the right, and
he talks so
on the left.
slow.
After that, there was a recognition that's bad. Don't do that again. But the Grand Mufti, who raised his own SS division, goes to Adolf Hitler to volunteer his help to get an SS division in the land of Israel.
Oh, so you went to Nazi Germany. Oh, you didn't? Then why are you talking about it?
To get the Jews out of the region. He returns home. He returns back to Cairo, 1946, 1947, and is a hero. And I say in the book, I said, this is something people should know more about. That is one of the reasons why the bacillus, the virus of anti-Semitism, comes back to the Muslim world, a victor. And if this was any other part of society, we would say, I mean, the right, left, whatever. But the fact that Muslim anti-Semitism is not being confronted is, to my mind, a great problem. Some people watching might think, well, why is it such a big problem? Why is, I'm not Jewish or, whatever. It's really that one of the things you can tell with, again, in this case, 100% accuracy, is that anti-Semitism is the sign of a society going rotten. It is one of the things you do when everything else is going wrong. So it's not about Jews and Muslims. It's not about Jews and non-Jews. It's about the fact that if you understand that there are certain things that our species falls into as traps, we're not any more evolved than we were thousands or tens of thousands of years ago. They're just traps we fall into. This is one of the big traps. And if your society falls into it, it goes off the cliff if it tolerates it. And I suppose that's one of the many reasons I care, why I've devoted so much time to this and so much energy.
But have you been there? So I guess this is not the specific clip that Dave was talking about, but to his earlier point, hasn't been there. Certainly didn't go to Nazi Germany, yet waxing poetic.
To demonstrate that it is absolutely necessary and that there's nothing else we could do in this situation.
Okay, John, your response.
Piers, two UFC fighters enter a ring and one punches the other in the nose. And Dave says, how dare he punches him in the nose in this fight? That's the analogy. He's not.
Nope. He just gave you the analogy. That you agree to fight, you step in the cage, and then you tell the other person that you're better at fighting them instead of actually fighting them. Strawman, yet again, I guess we're switching it up. For this guy, instead of projection, it's going to be Strawman. Strawman up the wazoo. Zippy said, war is mass murder. Very true.
And Dave says, how dare he punches him in the nose in this fight? That's the analogy. He's not making an appeal to facts, how the law of war works, how war works, whether it's the...
You're right. That's why he said, I'm not appealing to the law or how war works. Welcome to the conversation.
He's not making an appeal to facts, how the law of war works, how war works, whether it's the theory underneath the war or the actual framework to understand it. He doesn't like theory like just war theory, things like that. But the framework that is there. Now, he just said that one side has to show that there's a military necessity. He doesn't know these words, but that's what he's talking about.
He doesn't know these words. Military necessity. What could that possibly mean?
Stupid.
Come on, man.
One side has to show that there's a military necessity. He doesn't know these words, but that's what he's talking about, to actually enter the war. Hamas invaded Israel on October 7th.
I've never heard military necessity before. You blew my mind with your expertise.
Right, I know. It's like you need, I'll give you war 101 offline. That's fine. Hamas.
I love when people don't catch sarcasm. Like, okay.
Right, I know. It's like you need, I'll give you war 101 offline. That's fine. Hamas invaded Israel on October 7th. Israel invoked Article 51, a self-defense war in accordance with the United Nations, again, more frameworks that people need to know, and said Hamas will be destroyed, removed from political power, and the hostages returned.
So the question was, how is this not intentional?
Now, David said that's not necessary and that all Israel needs to do is put more men on the wall. That's what Dave said his solution, because he also doesn't study military theory on how do you win a war. He intermixes counterinsurgency theory with a war against removing a regime from power, defeating their military.
That's not.
This is
that's
what
not
Dave
what I
isn't
was
making
doing.
factual. You said that was exact words on Lex Freeman.
No.
He's not making an appeal to facts. I'm debating. He's making an appeal to emotion and morals, not what the.
So you can't debate morals. So because you're talking about hard facts, then we can't talk about morals. Otherwise, it's not a debate.
What?
Maybe you need an English class, bro.
The facts. I'm debating. He's making an appeal to emotion and morals, not what the law.
Morals. I'm making an appeal to logic and morals.
Hamas started a war on October 7th. Hamas is going to lose a war, and it's going to never be in power again. It's never. And Hamas is the one that says they want to do October 7th. But
fighting ghost, bro. Fighting ghost.
But Dave said, just put the wall up. They won't be able to do it on October 7th ever again, right? You have this blockade, although there was 100 tunnels going from Egypt to Gaza to build this military that Hamas built. And he'll say that Netanyahu sent him money. He's not making an appeal to facts. This is what we have a problem with Dave Smith. He makes an appeal to emotion and does historical revisionism. And he tells these narratives that aren't true.
How is it historical revisionism to say if you did something on purpose, that was intentional? What's historical or revisionist about that? Fartnock said, did you all see the viral clip of some guy impersonating Lex Friedman and Douglas Murray? I did not see that. I definitely would love to. You want to click the link at the top of the chat and join our free Discord. You can drop a link in there. We will definitely take a side quest for that. Matthew said it is obviously not mass murder. They filed articles with NATO. So as long as you tell NATO first, it's clearly fine. That's right. I forgot how war works. I needed his expertise.
The emotion and does historical revisionism. And he tells these narratives that aren't true.
Piers,
so his
can I just tell you, Piers?
Fails. He's anti-war.
What's so funny about this, Piers? Okay, what's so funny about this, Piers, is that after all of this, once again, all of this, I'm an expert, you don't know this, I'm an expert, you haven't studied military 101, then after all of that, the substance of what we're left with is, right, okay, got it. After all of that, the substance that we're left with is Hamas started the war on October 7th. Yes, the most basic point.
And he's shaking his head, yeah, oh yeah, now you're getting it, The war started, this conflict started on October 7th. There was no issues between Muslims and Jews before this. There was no issues with Palestine, Israel, God. These were not issues before October 7th. And he's shaking his head yes. If for no other reason, I know that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been around for a long time because I'm a millennial. So when I first got onto YouTube, not like as a as a viewer, we had viral silly videos. Some of you might remember the muffins video. The same guy who did the oh my god shiz. And he had all these different types of muffins. We have got bosenberry. We've got this, and then he starts going to the joke one. We've got Israeli-Palestinian conflict muffins. But no. It started in 2022 or whatever year that was. Oh my goodness. Shout out to Zippy DSM Lee again with the Rumble rant. So the only moral and lazy boy, you're make me stretch out all the way. Zippy says the only moral and ethics in war is kill the enemy. Civilians need to get out of the way or be subsumed by the war machine. That's reality. You are technically correct. I think that the point here is that while we understand that war is horrible, that is not an excuse to make it more horrible. It's horrible, but we don't need to make it more horrible.
With is Hamas started the war on October 7th. Yes, the most basic point that every pro-Israel person has made on this show forever. That's what you've got here. Okay.
I got a fact.
Yes, a super basic fact that you need no expertise to understand. If you literally were just watching CNN in the background, you would know about October 7th. So what expertise are we talking about? And he said, so then why did Hamas attack on October 7th? It was a completely unprovoked attack is what I'm hearing. Apparently. According to Professor John Spencer. So he said, war only ends when the worst things happen. One side is pushed to the limits and stops fighting. I mean, typically, yes, which is why we see this conflict going on so much, from what I can understand. And I am definitely not an expert. But it does seem like there's just too much desire for the fight, for the chaos you were talking about earlier, than for the victory. I don't get it. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's the way it seems.
Israel person is made on this show forever. That's what you.
Yeah, exactly, equality. Because there was nothing about this before October 7th.
The most basic point that every pro-Israel person is made on this show forever. That's what you've got here. Okay.
I got a fact.
It's
Now you
not.
wanna-
He got a fact, bro. He got a fact. Yo, the expert got a fact. He got a fact.
On this show forever. That's what you've got here. Okay.
I got a fact.
It's
Now you
not
want
a
to debate
fact.
the fact
It's not
of
a
how
fact.
Israel
Israel's
could
been.
achieve that goal.
By
How
the
they
way,
just-
you
how
don't
is that
Right? It's not even a fact.
even know what an appeal. It's not an appeal to emotion, by the way. That's not what it is. Although you do seem to be flirting with an appeal to authority.
You
It's
can't
not-
chill.
No, it's an appeal to morality. For me to describe the actual human impact of what this policy is resulting in is not an appeal to emotion. I mean, it's an appeal to morality, and it's an appeal to logic. An appeal to logic. Look, you can't answer me this very simple question, okay? Here's the very simple question.
Going back to a very simple question. Put a 1 in the chat if you think he's not going to answer it directly.
Okay? You'd have to admit, look, let's take the worst example, just not your example where there's a Hamas rocket firing at Israel.
Give me Gaza. Don't give me a hypothetical.
How would you feel if you didn't eat yesterday, John Spencer? Can't answer that.
Not your example where there's a Hamas
No
rocket
hypotheticals,
firing
give
at
me
Israel.
Gaza.
No
Give me Gaza. Don't give me a
hypotheticals. I'm
hypothetical.
too
In
stupid.
the morals
giving
of the
you
law.
Stupid.
Give me a
We're talking about morality and principles. So we want to have a situation where we could see if those morality and principles apply, but no hypotheticals.
I was about
actual
to. If you
on
interrupted
the-
me, I was on my way to. Let's say Israel targets an area where there are 2 combatants and 2 civilians. It's your 1-to-1 ratio, okay? And they decide that's acceptable by the international laws of war or whatever. By the way, in your appeal to the international laws, we didn't mention the ICC warrant for Netanyahu, which they don't seem to be respecting that much. But anyway, but you can still appeal to this framework, even though they never have to live up to it. But let's just say, okay, the exact same action happened domestically. If someone were to do that, you would call it intentional murder, right? How does the concept of intentionality change? Because a politician uttered the word war, they declared it, and it's taking place in a foreign country.
Because they're elite, Steve. They're the experts. Don't you understand? How dumb can you be?
Without appealing to authority or appealing to law.
Without appealing to authority or appealing to law.
They declared it, and it's taking place in a foreign country. Without appealing to authority or appealing to law or appealing to what war normally is, can you as a human being explain to me how the concept of intentional changes magically because a politician uttered the phrase war?
Nope.
Well, the thing about the politician, it's the framework. So yes, I can.
What's the framework? The framework of the fact that it is a war changes the intentionality? No, sir, it does not.
Well, the thing about the politician, it's the framework. So yes, I can give you, and this is
Buzzword.
literally you're explaining.
And I'm sorry, I keep interrupting him as much as you guys want to hear him, but I have to keep pointing out the woke tendencies here. This is wokeness, not willing to engage, bringing up talking points, just trying to bulldoze past the actual discussion to just lay in your point and treat the other person as bad with a label. You're just a comedian. This is wokeness. It doesn't matter left or right. Wokeness is wokeness.
It's the framework. So yes, I can give you, and this is literally you're explaining in the question how you don't know how the framework of a war works. And
So
the
teach me.
entire
Stop
history
telling me
of
I don't know.
Yeah,
Stop
exactly.
telling me I don't know and
No, no, I said
demonstrate it.
question.
Teach
I
me
didn't say you
something.
Like, do you know these things? Do you? Okay, fine. I don't know them. Do you know them?
And
So
the
teach me.
entire
Stop
history
telling me
of,
I don't know. Stop telling me I don't know and
No, no, I said
demonstrate it.
question.
Teach
I
me
didn't say you
something.
don't know. Your question. I'll teach you something. Your domestic law has a complete societal agreement on what those laws will be adjudicated and how they'll be determined.
No, it doesn't.
How a criminal deterrence, absolutely, American law.
Lots of people don't agree to the law.
If you kill somebody, then you'll be convicted of it.
That has nothing to do with agreement of the law. I don't understand how you can be this proficient in anything and yet be this bad at just having a conversation. This is what happens when you try to win instead of just have the conversation.
Don't agree to the law.
If you kill somebody, then you'll be convicted of a crime based on a jury and a judge, all this.
So what he said was people don't necessarily agree with the law. Not how does the law work?
Stupid. Then you want to apply that on war, but then disregard what the laws of war, the things that all nations have agreed to on. This is how we account for intentionality.
You can't do it without making an appeal to the law. You can't do it. You can't.
He's like, what? What? Oh, you said without the law, right? I didn't mean the law. I just mean, look at the face of confusion. He specifically said, without appealing to authority or appealing to the law. Explain this to me. And then he appeals to the law and the authority that created that law.
This is how we account for intentionality.
You can't do it without making an appeal to the law. You can't do it.
You
You can't explain it to me logically.
The body of laws have accounted for. How do you get?
We're not talking about laws. Maybe if you say it slower, he'll get better.
Go over that intentionality thing. If you use the same thing, which is when somebody says there's a war crime, or when you say Israel has intentionally targeted a civilian because, look, there's one. If you have to go to the statistical thing, we have issues unless you're doing comparative analysis. But
see, now you're just rambling. Come on, man. Guys, do not forget about our slow stream goal. I am tiny, I am puny, and you can help bulk me up. Check that out at the top of the chat, right above the pin chat.
But if there's one combatant and one civilian, you don't know that. Okay, what is that combatant? Is he a commander? Is he the commander?
Why does that matter? If we're talking about the intentionality of attacking that person or the intentionality of them attacking another person, it is not relevant. Non sequitur.
Is he a regular soldier? That accounts for what is the excessive collateral damage, and that's where intentionality gets into it. But, oh, by the way, what have you done to prevent it? In the domestic situation, you'd send the police to go get that criminal and then try them. In war, if you're a member of the other military in which I'm at war against, I don't have to have an excuse. I can kill you on sight.
Yeah.
So that has to do with intentionality. How?
No,
Okay, very quickly, before I let you...
This is a common thing when I talk to either leftists who are really bought in on whether it's trans or racism or whatever, that the I forgot what I was going to say. What did you say?
Kill you on sight.
Yeah, no,
okay,
I know,
very quickly.
again,
Oh, yeah. The common thing that I understand what you're telling me that you believe. What I'm asking you is, why do you believe that thing to be true? And then they'll give me another thing that they believe. I know that you believe that. I accept that you believe that. And I'm even willing to accept that it may be true, even though I personally don't believe it. What I'm asking you is for the reasoning, why you believe that. And similarly here, Dave is trying to say, I'm not talking about the law. I'm talking about the morality of an action. Yeah, but the law says this. Okay, great. The law says that. Well, what about the morality? Well, you're just appealing to morality. Yes, that is the conversation.
Have an excuse. I can kill you on sight.
Yeah, no,
okay,
I know,
very quickly,
again,
before I let you...
Hang on, Dave. Hang on, logistical differences.
Hang on, Dave. Hang on, Dave. Dave's going to stay with me when Eric wants. Hang on, guys. Hang on, John. We're going to let you go, John. Before we let you go, I want to ask you just one thing that also came out of the debate with Douglas and Dave, which was this issue of whether people who have what most people believe to be bad faith deliberate conspiracy theory nonsense views. For example, Daryl Cooper saying Churchill was the chief villain of the Second World War. Whether people like Daryl Cooper should be platformed on gigantic podcasts like Joe Rogan or not, particularly if
Cancel culture has nothing to do with wokeness, right? Just we're establishing that cancel culture and deplatforming people has nothing to do with wokeness. Oh wait, it's a hallmark. Okay, just making sure. Just making sure.
Should be platformed on gigantic podcasts like Joe Rogan or not, particularly if they're not going to be really vigorously challenged on what is something that to me is such an obviously untrue and offensive premise. What's your quick view of that?
Shout out to Josie. Welcome to the party. Dave is now dismantling his second expert in 3 days. Welcome to the party. CT said, I don't think he would ever win, but I have to say I would love to see a Dave Smith presidential debate. Whoever he gets put across, he will railroad. I mean, I don't know why I did that. We were this close. If he hadn't had the issues with his son, he was planning on running, and I would have loved to see it. And of course, yeah, we wouldn't expect him to win, but how he could move the needle between his own mind and the fact that he can get on these big platforms, whether it's Rogan, he could get on all these different places. And I even think someone like the Young Turks would be open to having Dave on. And so he could definitely do some work. He ain't gonna win, but he could do some work. Shout out to Amanda Price. Welcome. Very good to see you. Let's dive back in here.
Obviously untrue and offensive premise. What's your quick view of that?
I think that we should not platform historical revisionists who go
So again, cancel culture, nothing to do with wokeness.
Go back in time and find a fact and then tell it in a certain way to spin the narrative of what we should know about events. If you want to look at Daryl Cooper, look at the list of deleted tweets from Daryl Cooper. I'm against intellectually. Again, no expertise involved. Anybody can research what
this is the level. I just put this together. So you guys know that I'm a big fan of using TikTok. And before, when Spencer here was saying that, I did get this stuff from research, not from TikTok videos. I didn't put together that this was the same type of argument that people would use about Twitter. Like, oh, you're just getting your information on Twitter. And now he's appealing to what he's saying on Twitter.
I'm against intellectually. Again, no expertise involved. Anybody can research whatever they want. And
then what the fuck are we arguing?
if they come out with a new finding, that's great. Using evidence, using data, using a research methodology. But no, you don't get to be a historical revisionist like Dave.
Yes, you do. It's called America, Jack. It's called freedom of speech, Jack. It's the reason we now have an entirely new media landscape, because people like you didn't want it, yet we beat you.
Actually, I do.
Okay, John Spencer, thank you very much indeed. Well, Dave, I'm going to let you respond, but with Eric. So I'm going to say goodbye to John. John, thank you. It was a riveting debate between you two. I really appreciate it.
All right. So does anybody really want to hear from Eric or Brett? Eric Weinstein on this? Because he is up next, and they kind of are talking about the same things. But there's a lot in the podcast. So put a 1 in the chat if you really want to stay and hear Brett Weinstein instead of going over to Dave's podcast and see what he had to say about all this after he already did the podcast reviewing the debate. So he's talking about this debate as well as Murray's. Matthew King said people are allowed to be wrong and you're allowed to prove them wrong. Yeah, maybe that's what it is. That's what it is. His overlords, his expert bosses who are more expert than him, didn't let him know that he was actually allowed to prove somebody wrong. That's the problem. You figured it out. Josie said this David Douglas debate kind of took on a life of its own. I already heard Eric's view. Kind of boring, and he sides with Dave. So I will take that and the fact that I do not see any ones, and that we will move over to our.
Once you start arguing, Zanies on the Late Show on Chicago and Fast. I kind of switched up what I had in mind for this when Rob got his flat tire and I realized I was going to be doing the show solo. I actually thought, instead we'll get back to covering the news. There is a lot of interesting stuff going on. We'll get back into that tomorrow. But for today, I thought maybe it would make sense to spend an episode on this more theoretical topic, but it is something that it really gets right to the core of why I view things the way I do. Obviously, I'm still in this moment right now where there's a lot of, attention on this debate that I did with Douglas Murray the other day. This was something that I had mentioned in the debate, and then it generated some outrage, and there were some people who took issue with it. So I just kind of wanted to do an episode explaining more or less like my feelings about war and really the nature of government. And this is very foundational to my strain of libertarianism. And I think really it is the foundational insight of Rothbardian libertarianism is essentially that. And by the way, I'm sorry, I should mention this. We did talk about this for a few minutes at the opening of yesterday's show. And I did, I did a Piers Morgan episode yesterday that will be out today at 3 p.m. Eastern. For you guys watching live, for you guys who are subscribed at partoftheproblem.com, you're watching it. That should be out in a couple hours. For the rest of you guys, if you're watching it over on YouTube or stuff, I guess earlier today, this episode was released. But so I got into, an argument with this military expert about the morality of war. And I was arguing the morality of war. He was arguing.
I did not see that. We can watch that in the after party. If you guys want to watch that in the after party, I am absolutely down to watch that in the after party. If you are not a member, guys, make sure you join up. Thank you for the let me know. The morality of war, and I was arguing the morality of war. He was arguing the legality of war, and was kind of. You guys tell me, go watch the episode. But I thought just like he seemed unable to grapple with what I was saying. Literally unable. He's like, wait, but the law is the law. Hey, shout out to Jonesy with the super sticker. That's another one with StreamYard. Show the goddamn sticker. One of these days, they're working on it. But of course, a treat for Morty. And guys, that does count in my book. That counts as a swole stream. So we now have 3 out of 10, guys. We also have the $50 limit. So if anybody wants to throw in and hit $50, but 10 super chats of $2 or more gets me on the floor. Thank you so very, very much.
And here it is, the best I can put it. This is the Rothbardian insight, okay? It is essentially that the moral characteristic of a government action is no different than the moral characteristic of an individual's action or a group of individuals' actions. So in other words, if the government can call it taxation, but if anyone else did it, you would consider it theft. The government can call it civilian casualties, but if anyone else did it, you'd consider it murder. The government can call it, detainment, but if anyone else did it, you'd consider it kidnapping. And essentially, this is all a fiction. It's all a fiction down to, as Frederick Bastiat said, right? The government is the great fiction by which we all attempt to live at each other's expenses.
That's a bar. Let's hear that one more time.
Is the great fiction down to, as Frederick Bastiat said, right? The government is the great fiction by which we all attempt to live at each other's expenses.
Oof.
The fundamental insight is that governments do not exist. There's no such thing. Now, I don't mean to say that they don't exist in.
All right, Andrew Wilson. Rights don't exist. There's only force.
Not exist. There's no such thing. Now, I don't mean to say that they don't exist in any sense, but they're a social construct. They're not real. Like there isn't real. They are
real. They're not tangible.
These are titles that human beings make up. They're like sheriff and prisoner are not real objective things. They're titles that human beings have made up and then given to other human beings. There is no such thing as the state. There is no such thing as the government. There are buildings, there are people, there are things that we call those people, but this is not, and in the same sense that like the number 4 doesn't exist. Like there could be 4 things, but the number 4 is something that human beings came up with to help us understand the world.
I don't like the way that he's articulating this because, of course, 4 does exist and rights exist and these labels exist. But what he's saying is that they're not inherent to the universe. You know, when we talk about free will or whatever, and I use my example of subjective morality, and we talk about the rules of chess. There's no inherent rules of chess to the universe. We made it up. So if we wanted to change the rules, then whatever we determine the rules are, those are the rules. That doesn't mean that the rules of chess don't exist. It just means they're not objectively tied to the fabric of the universe.
Okay, well, the government is something that human beings came up with. Okay, the Rothbardian answer would be that really they were just the gang that took over and then convinced everybody else that they're the government. But even if you want to view like a more classically liberal view of it, it's like we came together to create this thing to protect rights or something like that.
Claudia said, force doesn't exist. You can't smell it. That's pretty much the argument. Except that, he is just misspeaking, whereas Andrew Wilson legitimately believes that point.
Is the founding...
So it doesn't
the
exist.
foundation of the United States of America was the Declaration of Independence, which basically makes this argument, right? That God wants man to be free. And so we institute governments to protect our rights.
Thank you, dude. Yeah, we got 11 people, 8 likes. Let's just can we get 2 more? We don't have to be full, just 2 more likes. That would very, very, very much feed my ego. Thank you. Glumzek said, to be honest, isn't it a good sign if something as Isn't it a good sign if something as snap as a debate with Dave and Douglas blew up so much? Less problems to cry about clickbait with, I guess. As small. Okay. Something as small as a debate. Gotcha. I mean, a lot of people gave me shit for clickbait on the Murray side. They're like, change the title. You still have time to take this down. Bro, oh my God, the cringe. That's another thing I want to do. I wanted to look at the comment section of the Sam Cedar one, and then the Dave Smith Douglas Murray one turned to the same thing. I want you guys to really see, because this is we do live streams, then it's not as common for you guys to see the comment section afterwards, but it is a good place to hang out, and comments really help the channel, so check it out.
Wants man to be free. And so we institute governments to protect our rights. Okay, now that's a
thank you for the likes, guys. Very, very, very much appreciated.
A little bit sloppy. It's the most beautiful thing that's ever been written. I'm not saying you can't exactly prove it. It's not exactly self-evident that there is a God and that the God wants us to be free, but I sure do like the way it sounds. Anyway, so if you really think about it, on some level, and I do think this is why it kind of touches a nerve when you talk about this stuff, because on some level, everybody knows this. Everybody knows this to be true. Just because we're all human beings. We all know that there's no magical look. If you believe in morality and if you believe in logic, which you essentially have to.
So this is where we got in. Basically, he was saying we'll just 7. What's 7 plus 6? 7 plus 6 is 13.
If you knew there were women and children who were going to die as a result of this.
That was a pretty good pick. That was like exactly where we left off. In case you missed early on the stream, he was basically just saying there's no way to twist the fact that you intentionally killed people as a moral good. Obviously, without the conversation we just had, understanding that will stop something worse.
Oh, okay. Or that you'd be charged with first-degree murder. But I'm not making an appeal to the law. I'm saying that morally speaking, as human beings, we would all go, no, that is intentional. You don't get to just say it's not intentional. If you knew there were women and children who were going to die as a result of this and you did it anyway, then you did it intentionally. So the essence of the point is that the concept of intentionality doesn't change because a government's doing it and because it's being done in another country. Now, if you want to attempt to justify the policy, okay, but you don't get to say that the laws of logic and the laws of morals don't apply anymore. And so when
T. Viersky said, I did notice the day after the debate, I had several peeps who supported Murray, all less than 500 subs, all angry that Dave dare question the machine. Kind of strange. Now, I personally, obviously, I've had my sub count thrown at me in a derogatory way, so I don't necessarily look at that as the validity to your argument. But if you're supporting Murray, I can certainly judge you on that. And it is very strange. It's strange because typically when we see that much of a divide with the same video, the same conversation, it's a left-right thing. But as we've been saying for so long, that left and right don't necessarily really fit the political landscape the way that they used to. And, it was class and establishment versus anti-establishment. And now it just seems to be woke or not woke, willing to engage in discussion or not, dogmatically attached to whatever you have. So you said Dave is retarded, but he gets you thinking. Reminds me of me. I don't think he is retarded at all, but I don't think you are either. So same boat. Woke on woke crime. Well, Dave's not woke, but yeah.
Okay. But you don't get to say that the laws of logic and the laws of morals don't apply anymore. And so when I, I'm debating these guys, or when I was debating this guy on Piers Morgan yesterday, he just kept responding to this with, but you don't understand international law. You don't understand the laws of war. You don't understand. And it's like, no. You don't understand my point.
Guys, 4.5 minutes left on our swoggle. Help bulk me up. I think we got to put another one for Morty's treats, but help me out. I'm skinny, I am puny, and I need your inspiration.
These things are all social constructs. And fine, there might be some benefit to some and there might be some flaws in them, but that has nothing to do with the point that I'm making. This is a fundamental reality. It's not a subjective opinion. This isn't how I view.
He's staring at the treats.
Things. This is just objectively the truth.
Give him one freebie.
Okay, so I think what ends up happening with this is that people, the implications of this.
That's a freebie. And we turn off ads on the stream. So come on.
Are like kind of devastating.
Equality and deference is headed out. You have a good one. Thank you so very much for stopping by. What is going on with my mouse?
The implications of this are like kind of devastating. And I find this, it's a similar thing with peaceful parenting. I've noticed that before. Like when you talk about peaceful parenting, which I'm a big believer in, I think it's just wrong to hit kids. Okay. Now, you can very easily make the argument. It's overwhelming. It's so obvious that it's wrong to hit kids. I mean, it's literally, it's insane that everybody accepts that it's immoral to hit women, for men to hit women. Maybe not everybody, but
to quote Bill Burr, you can tell me there's never a reason? There's never a reason? Guys, don't forget to hit the poll. It is very relevant to members, so make sure that you hit the poll.
Just about everybody accepts that. If somebody found out, that I was hitting my wife, I mean, I think I would lose an overwhelming amount of support, and rightfully so. If it came out that I was like a wife beater or something like that, people would be like, yeah, I can't ever listen to this guy again. This is like a horrible thing to be. And why is that? Well, it's because obviously women, generally speaking, are weaker than men. It's okay. Kids are far weaker than women, right? It's just, and
I've made this argument for a long time, and I've always had to, kind of kneecap myself as not being a parent, not being an expert on raising children. But I do have a degree in psychology. I don't use that as a flex, but I'm just saying I understand certain things about how the human brain works and child development and stuff like that. And the argument of hitting your kids has always been that if the kid is old enough to understand reason, then reason with the kid. If the kid is not old enough to understand reason, then they're not going to understand the reason that you're hitting them. So at no point does it make sense to hit unless you're comparing it to the to doing nothing, which again is a false dichotomy. It's not either beat your kids or let them do whatever you want. It takes more time, takes more effort, takes more emotion, and all that stuff. But you can accomplish. It's very clear that you can raise a well-adjusted child without beating them. CT said, it blows my mind the people that can still say Dave Smith is making disingenuous arguments or that Dave Smith is woke. You either have not absorbed enough of his content or you are being disingenuous. Kind of like the wokies. Now, part of that is a specifically with Dave Smith is his proximity to Candace Owens. That's a lot of it, because Candace Owens has really I know. Do I personally think she is anti-Semitic? No. Has she flirted with rhetoric that can be misconstrued as anti-Semitic? Absolutely. But whatever. I'm not the kind of person that's going to be, well, you sound like you said anything. I'm just putting it out there as to why people like James Lindsay will look at Dave Smith and say, no, you're the woke right, because of people like Candace. And it's like, but that doesn't really fit what woke ever meant. You're just saying, I don't like that. And that's not what woke means. It's an orthodoxy. It's a way of maintaining a singular mode of thinking based on an authority. A lack of willing to engage in discussion and be willing to shut down discussion based on ad hominem, all that kind of stuff. That's what wokeness is. And that's exactly what we saw from Douglas Murray. That's exactly what we saw from John Spencer. They are the woke right. God damn it.
Listen to this guy again. This is like a horrible thing to be. And why is that? Well, it's because obviously, like, women, generally speaking, are weaker than men. It's okay. Kids are far weaker than women, right? Like, it's just, and also, like, if I were to hit my wife, like, she has some degree of recourse. She can call the cops. She can leave me. She's an adult. She could try to fight back. She could grab a weapon. I don't know. I'm just saying kids have none of that. Okay, so you could make this argument. It's overwhelming. By the way, for people who have problems with the argument, I could go much more in depth on that, but I don't want to get too distracted. But then there comes this visceral reaction when you talk about this. And really, it's because of what the implications of it are. It's like the implications are now, you're saying my dad abused me. You're saying I abuse my kids. You're saying, but I'm just saying, like, none of that takes on the argument.
Very true. But I am very curious as to what you guys think of this new poll. Is it okay to hit kids as a regular punishment? So the reason I put the word regular in there is because I can conceive of a situation where, your kid does something that's so egregious that you don't have the skills to figure out, how do I handle this? And you need to handle it in the moment. And it's that, and so on. I can conceive of those situations, but talking about a regular thing where, you missed your choice, you're getting beat. You stayed out too late, you're getting beat. 50-50. God damn. All right. Jaden's heading out. You have a good one. So you said Dave Smith is retarded, but retarded in a smart like a fox savant way. I think he can simplify his arguments more, but that may lead to more misunderstanding. I don't really think he's retarded in any way. What makes you say he's retarded? I think he's pretty articulate. I mean, the way that he explained that one argument, I didn't love, about the tangible versus real, but whatever. But what has he done that's retarded in any kind of way?
You're saying I abuse my kids. You're saying, but I'm just saying, like, none of that takes on the argument. And it's fucking crazy. It's fucking crazy that people could find out I hit my kids and it wouldn't have the same reaction if they found out I hit my wife. By the way, I don't do either. Man, someone's going to clip that up. Okay. Anyway.
Matthew King said, I try not to hit my kids, but man, they make it hard. And yeah, I would never suggest that it is an easy thing to do to raise the children without using violence. I would never say that. But the question is, it the right thing to do? Is it not better for you to be able to find other ways of discipline? And, you always, especially from Gen Xers, you're going to hear, well, I got beaten. I turned out fine. Did you though? And maybe you turned out fine. But is that the goal when we're raising children, to make sure they're fine? Or do we want to give them the best life possible? There you go. Pinching is not hitting. Pinching is not hitting. Fair enough. He said, maybe I'm trying too hard to read between the lines. Maybe. I like this concept that it should be for embarrassment, not pain. And that goes along with, like, parents or they tell parents that if you're going to hit your kids, never hit your kids when you're angry. And so, I mean, if you're going to do it, there should be that reason behind it. And it is it's tough to, especially as a non-parent, to be able to see. But as a non-parent and as somebody who was beat as a kid and definitely didn't need to be, then and I mean, I don't know if I turned out so fine. You know what I mean? Shout out to TV Viewerski, our co-sponsor with Morty, of course. Gotta head out. Thank you so very, very much. Let's out-sponsor this bitch. He's leaving early. Let's out-sponsor him. Come on, $10.50 will do it. $11, you got it.
Code prop. So this has gotten quite a reaction from several people. So I thought first I would take on oh gosh, I'm blanking on her name, which sorry about that. But I was on, there's this lady who she put out a video of this.
Douglas Murray and Dave Smith recently appeared on an episode of Joe Rogan, and there are these constant false analogies. Here was Dave Smith's analogy. If somebody comes and kills a member of your family and you seek revenge against them, and you know where they live, and you go out and blow up their entire building with them alongside men, women, and children inside, you would be convicted of murder of all of them. That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
However,
yeah, that's his argument. That's it. That's the whole argument. So you agree?
that is a false analogy, and we're going to explain why. Two key omissions and contortions are, number one, who has the authority to respond? And number two, what is the objective of responding? In the analogy given, there is a private
truth and acknowledging of morals. Now, I want you to pay attention to the mental gymnastics that dogma, that believing that this side cannot possibly be wrong. This thing that I believe cannot possibly be wrong. It's axiomatically correct, and everything that I believe about this thing comes from the fact that Israel's right, or Palestine is right, or whatever it is. I'm telling you.
And number two, what is the objective of responding? In the analogy given, there is a private individual whose motivation is to exact revenge. This is called vigilante justice, and it is illegal. So we understand, first of all, that the analogy is incorrect because a civilian is not the authorized body to respond.
Appeal to authority. And yeah, Guamsek, I think that is a perfect example. One of the things that I'll tell my dog training clients, if, commonly with attention-seeking behaviors. So jumping, nipping, barking. So when dogs are doing, other things, you tell them not to do that. You tell them to leave it down, whatever. But if they're jumping on you, if they're using their teeth on, when you're playing and all that stuff, then those are attention-seeking behaviors. So if you give more attention to that, then it's going to reinforce that behavior. The dog doesn't understand the difference between you saying, no, I don't like that, and you just giving it more attention. Unless, of course, you work with me and you can talk to your dog. But so we use other ways to exactly what Guantek said, something loud and abrupt, or you just take a little squirt bottle with some water and spray it right on their nose. And just, whoa, what was that? And so every time they're jumping, every time they're nipping, every time they're barking at whatever, just water. It's enough. It's enough. And the idea is reasoning. Give the dog a reason. Give the child a reason to not want to do that. Now, if the reason is so I don't get in trouble, then you're going to end up like me and becoming good at lying to your parents and doing shit in a way less safe way. Something that I was going to do anyway. I forget how to bring that back to the dog. But the point stands that it shouldn't be about pain. It should be about shame and embarrassment and giving them an incentive to not want to do that behavior again. All right, where were we?
First of all, that the analogy is incorrect because a civilian is not the authorized body to respond. Second of all, what is the objective of responding?
Okay, let's pause it here. So yeah, this is, you could say we all understand, but this is just nothing. It has nothing to do with the analogy at all.
Nope. Zippy, is this after the thing you put in Discord? I'll read it that way, see if it makes sense. In a war, you have to exhaust the other side until they give up. For Israel, that means getting the whole Middle East to not bother them with non-official armies. I mean, if we had Star Trek tech, they could put up a wall and be done with the outsiders. Like a dome, like an iron dome. Zippy said by 8 or so, I learned not to mess around. I had a cousin who was mental, lots of problems. Grandma and wooden spoon set him right. When he was there, when he was home, he caused a lot of problems. And yeah, that's how the brain works. And so whether you're talking about children or you're talking about dogs, you have to give them the right incentive, because not everything that works in the immediate is what you want. So, you know, let's just mix the analogies here. So if you have a dog and you know, they're doing stuff and you hit them, then you might get them to stop doing the thing that you hit them for, but they won't understand anything other than I get hit when I do this. And that's the person that does it. So then when you are expected to have a bond with that dog, then they might turn out fine eventually. We got all this right. Yeah. I got you. All right, I'm back in here.
This is, you know, true. So, like, legally speaking, she's not even right. You technically have all of the rights of the cops. Okay, I shouldn't say that. You don't have all the rights of the cops, but cops aren't allowed to kill people aggressively. They're allowed to use self-defense. So are you. You can actually make a citizen's arrest. But regardless of any of that, you see already how this completely misses the point. They don't have the authority. Again, it's a social construct. That's something we're deciding. And by the way, think about the, you know, she's saying it's a false analogy or whatever, which is completely wrong. But think about this concept. And this is one of the things that just immediately falls apart about the idea of democracy. You're like, okay, they have the authority. Okay, where'd they get that authority from?
The people.
We, the people. Okay, so then the people have that authority. How can the people grant a group of people authority that they themselves never had? Right?
You can't, bro. You can't.
It's all just ridiculous. You know, anyway, it doesn't matter. So change the analogy to law enforcement then, okay? So if law enforcement was pursuing a bad guy and that bad guy goes into a building with a lot of innocent people.
And they are the correct authority, right? We are using the correct authority for that situation. We have a bad guy goes into a building with a lot of innocent people. We would use law enforcement for that. Correct? That's where the authority lies.
And then the sheriff said, blow up the building. We would convict that sheriff of murder. And if anybody went there, he goes, no, it was totally unintentional that he killed all those people. We'd go, what? No, it wasn't. He knew the people were in there. Go, yeah, but he only wanted to get the bad guy. That's just ridiculous. So
that doesn't change the fact.
Again, this isn't an omission. I guess maybe I just assumed that people could figure this part out for themselves. So I didn't.
How dare you?
You know what happens when you assume, Dave. You know what happens when you assume. Glomtech says YouTube won't let me comment this. Ooh, Glomtech getting spicy. Said I can't wait for the age when I get to drop a tungsten rod for punishment. It's so freaking loud. I drop it once and they'll never ignore you if you even pick it up again. A tungsten rod? What? I don't know if I have a. What are we talking about here? Let's do a little side quest. Okay, I guess this is not getting us anything close to what I was talking about. What the fuck is this shit? Oh, Oh, that's music. Okay. Well, we get it. I tried to add some flowery extras, and that's what happens.
I guess maybe I just assumed that people could figure this part out for themselves, so I didn't spell it out exactly, but it's not an omission, and it doesn't change the analogy at all. The analogy does not fail. It doesn't matter. Again, it's a demonstration that you're fundamentally missing the point of what I'm saying when you start going, well, that's because they're not the cops. You know, my whole point is it doesn't matter. The whole point is it does not matter. If it's immoral for people to do it to somebody else, then it's also immoral for people to do it to somebody else, even if those people happen to have blue uniforms and badges on. That doesn't change the moral characteristic of an action. That's the fundamental point. So no, you've done nothing so far. All right, let's keep playing.
That's also illegal. Nobody, not even the authorities, have the right to exact revenge. The correct equivalent.
Exactly. Why is that? Because it's immoral and thus made illegal, not the other way around.
That the authorities, who are the authorized body to respond, are acting not out of revenge, but for the purpose of retrieval. Not just retrieval, but the capture of an individual who has committed a crime and has evaded responsibility and has verbally promised to commit the same crime 1,000 times more. Now let's give an accurate analogy.
Okay.
All right, she's going to school Dave Smith.
Let's pause it before she goes to her accurate analogy. Again, she's bringing in the hostages here, and like, you can do that. I'll still go through this analogy with the hostages, but just to be clear, like, this is the game that these people who support this war in Gaza play, is that there's always from the very beginning been what they call like the dual goal of the war, right?
I don't even know what that means. I've literally never even heard of that that string of words relevant to this, but it is exactly what I said. It is exactly what I said. You're working backwards from, I guess this would be a pro-Palestinian person. You're working backwards from Israel bad, or possibly Jews bad. You're working and finding a way to make that fit. The same exact way that transes will work backwards from the idea that you can, gender has nothing to do with biology, and then use all these intellectual things to, twist it up and rationalize. It's mental gymnastics. The same way that religious people will claim that, they know this, that, and whatever. And when asked for proof, when asked for reasoning, then there's all these reasons. Well, you need to open your heart a little more. You would know. This is not a good way of thinking. This is not an intelligent way to move through life. Whether any of these issues, it supersedes politics. This is pure logic. Just because you don't like a thing doesn't make it automatically bad. You have to make that argument first.
They've always said it's retrieving the hostages and eliminating Hamas. So I'm more talking about the eliminating Hamas part. But if you're going to get into if retrieval is the only goal, like, okay, but you're still in the same situation. You still don't have the right to kill innocent people.
Right. Yeah. Zeppy, this is why it's kind of like, let's stay out of it. They don't seem to want to solve this. So do what you want to do and leave us out of it as much as possible.
Like, now, again, I'm not claiming that there's no scenario where, all things being considered, reasonable people might support a policy where innocent people die.
Exactly.
I'm making the point that
if that is going to happen, there should be an articulable reason.
Can't claim it's not intentional. The concept of intentionality does not magically transform. Now, if you were trying to retrieve someone, let's say, again, make it a domestic comparison. So the cops are dealing with a hostage situation. Okay. Well, first of all, what the cops do in that situation is they call in what's known as a negotiator, and you negotiate with the person who's taking the hostages. Now, if a sniper can get a clean shot, meaning we have reasonably high suspicion that nobody else will be hurt in this, then that's one thing. But if somebody were to come in, let's say they kidnap one of your kids and they go hold them up somewhere, and the sniper says, I have a shot, it'll kill 3 other kids, but we could kill the guy and then retrieve the kid, they'd be like, no, because you can't kill 3 kids to save 1 kid, because when it's domestically, we view all human life as equal.
Yep. To be said, yeah, but then we'd have to leave the Middle East completely, and gas prices would be $10 a gallon. Worth it for all of those deaths? Yes. Now, would I be happy paying $10 a gallon? Absolutely not. But if we knew that was the case, I'm sure Mr. Dealmaker could figure something out that doesn't involve dead babies on both sides. Police actions and wars are completely different things. Sure, but the intentionality, which is Dave's point here, is the same. It does not matter if it's different context. If something is wrong, it's wrong. There's no macro and micro morality. Varnock said, do you know Justin from Deconstruction Zone? Ex-Bible scholar, atheist, a bunch of pushing from debate. Andrew Wilson might be the perfect candidate to hand him a huge L. Well, I'm also an atheist, so I don't know if that would be on the same, if that would be, but either way, no, I am not familiar with him, but let's check him out. Let's check out the destruct. Deconstruct. Come on. I can spell construction zone. There he is. Deconstruction zone. I'm not familiar. No. Live right now? All right, what they got going on right now? Let's do a little side quest. Oh,
it's cursed later. We won't have to worry about that. Jesus told this disciple.
The olive tree.
Sorry, it's a fig tree.
Tragic.
All right, one more question. What caused Nehemiah to weep for days, fast and pray to God? Wow, this is actually a really tough one too, because two answers are very similar.
I think it's the temple lay in ruins.
Nope, Jerusalem's wall. Remember, they already started to rebuild the temple. That's what Haggai noticed when he was there. It was the walls that he wanted to come back and rebuild. So he
is an atheist, but he knows a lot about the Bible and stuff. Pretty cool. Well, I have subscribed and of course hit the like button, because what kind of asshole watches a YouTube video and doesn't hit the like button? But yeah, I will definitely check out some of his stuff, and seems like we could get at least an interesting conversation, if not a debate, open. Shout out to Zippy DSML, the $1 Rumble Ram. Thank you, sir. Said the intentions of war are to beat the enemy until they give up. That's why the army does not run the police. Very good point. Very good point.
Oh, because you can't kill 3 kids to save 1 kid, because when it's domestically, we view all human life as equal. It's not the case with Israel-Palestine. But then I would just make the other point is that because she brings in that they've threatened to do it 1,000 times over, which certainly is true. Hamas has made some threats about, there's several, or at least 3 high-level Hamas people who I've heard say that they're going to do as many October 7th as possible.
They're bad dudes, okay? They're bad dudes, which is why if I was to support Israel, then it would be on the grounds that they are going in for some type of surgical attack on the leaders and ending the conflict. But that doesn't seem to be the goal.
But this is kind of a distraction from the point. It doesn't, threats, when you're talking about what you're allowed to do based off threats, a huge element of that is how credible the threat is. So if I'm walking down the street, if a crazy random person puts a gun to my head and says, I'm going to fucking kill you, and I can get to a gun quick enough, I have the right to kill that person. That is self-defense. If I'm walking down the street and...
If you're at a track meet and you go into the wrong tent and then somebody tells you to leave and then grabs you and or pushes you, that's not enough. Guys, we are coming up on the 2.5-hour mark. If you would like to keep the party raging, you know how to do it.
And a homeless schizophrenic person mutters to themselves, I'm going to fucking kill you. And then I pull out a gun and shoot them in the head. I'm guilty of murder. Like, that was not self-defense. And similarly, the question doesn't just become what is Hamas threatened? It's more like, and is this actually achievable? You know, like, for example, our political leadership has threatened Iran up and down. I mean, Donald Trump himself, John McCain, when he was running for president, said, if you remember famously, what's that Beatles song? Bomb, 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 bomb Iran. Like, he thought it was a joke. But we threaten Iran.
Okay, that's kind of funny. So the problem is they're so intermingled in the common population, you're not going to be that surgical. Okay, we don't need to be that surgical. It's not going to be exactly like SEAL Team 6 and Osama bin Laden, but there's military experts all around the world. No, NATO is, pretty good at planning wars. Seems like there could be a better way to go about this if we wanted to do that. I don't know. Maybe so the stabbing thing is wild. A fist fight, sure, that's fine, but full escalation, yeah.
Oh, hell no.
Yeah, you guys all saw Tim's very bad take on that, right? I mean, he changed it now, but what a bad take.
What's that Beatles song? Bomb, 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 bomb around. Like you thought it was a joke. But we threaten around constantly. Now, if Iran were, which they do have the capability to do, were to like blow, send a missile to one of our bases in the region and kill a whole bunch of our soldiers, they couldn't go, well, yeah, you guys threatened us.
Hey, shout out to You Are Mine. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the party. Very good to see ya. We are just checking out some more Dave Smith. He debated another military expert on Piers Morgan, and he is recapping it here with some girl on TikTok who thinks she knows better. Maybe she does. You don't have to be an expert, but does she? Welcome, welcome, welcome.
So we had a right to respond. Not everybody here, including you, Iranian lady, would be like, no, that was an act of aggression. So it's just a little beside the point. But anyway, it has nothing to do with the analogy anyway. All right, so let's go to her better analogy.
Analogy. A kidnapper breaks into your house and steals your child. You don't go after the kidnapper. You call the authorities. Law enforcement then pursues that.
Then they could just bomb anybody because you called them, right? No?
Kidnapper. But what that kidnapper does is he goes and hides himself in a school playground. He buries himself amongst a bunch of children, and he's got that child in his arms. In this scenario, law enforcement has the right to act. They don't have carte blanche, but they have the right to act.
Okay, so again, that's the argument. Did anybody say, no, you can't do anything? But carte blanche kind of sounds like blowing up innocent people.
Law enforcement has the right to act. They don't have carte blanche, but they have the right to act. And not only do they have the right, they must act. Because failure to act is immorality. Failure to act leads to the potential death of that child.
Agreed. But act doesn't mean blow up a building.
This is a non-negotiable. To claim otherwise is immorality itself. A response is a moral obligation.
Okay, let's pause it right there. She's again going back and forth between the law and morality here. I am not making an appeal to the law. But again, the law is a social construct. Morality is not. They're very different. Slavery was the law of the land. I don't know if the Holocaust was technically the law, but certainly Adolf Hitler changed the laws to be able to disarm the Jewish people and seize their businesses and put them in concentration camps.
At the very least, it was sanctioned by the elected leader.
The law, when we're talking about what's right and wrong, the law doesn't matter. What matters is morality. Now, if you're going to say, because by the way, legally speaking, in fact, our Supreme Court has ruled on this, legally speaking, cops don't have an obligation to act. But if you want to say they have a moral obligation to act, I would probably agree with you in some cases. But again, it's awfully vague to just say act. Nobody's saying you're not allowed to act. We're saying you're not allowed to murder women and children. Bingo. So that's kind of different. All right, let's keep playing.
Law enforcement officer shoots at the kidnapper. And as a result of that, the children around the kidnapper die. Who do you think bears the legal, moral, and factual responsibility?
Okay, so just pause.
Obviously, the kidnapper. What does this have to do with the intentionality of law enforcement in this situation? Oh, nothing? Got it.
Again, yes. Nobody is arguing. In my scenario, if the sniper goes, I have a clean shot at his head, he shoots him, takes him out, but then the bullet also hits a kid accidentally. Yeah.
That's just collateral damage. And when I say just, I mean, it's bad, but it's not as bad as intentionally killing non-combatants.
Yeah, nobody's claiming, the moral responsibility of that would be on the person who took them hostage. It was a mistake, certainly, to take that shot, but he didn't realize it was a mistake. However, if they level the building, then they are guilty of murder. And I'm not even talking about the law. The law would be on my side on this. I'm saying, morally speaking, you intentionally killed these innocent people.
And yet people are still arguing. People are still arguing against this. What even is the argument to say, no, it's okay to intentionally kill those people? If the only time I would say that the argument that this girl is making would be reasonable would be if it's your child And you're like, I don't give a fuck about these other kids. I don't give a fuck about anybody else. Do what you got to do to get my child back. If you're in that situation, it's still not morally justifiable, but it's certainly understandable. Farnog said, when did ladies decide the claymation look was going to be the next hot trend? Oh, got him.
Take a look at Gaza. Which one do you think that is? Do you think it was a sniper who missed and hit a kid? No, they leveled the whole goddamn. Israel embarked on a policy that they knew with 100% certainty would result in women and children being slaughtered. That's intentional. You're not, it doesn't matter how much you try to dress up this analogy. Okay, there were hostages. Yes, okay. Absolutely. Does Israel?
And another woke aspect of this is the, I mean, we keep using the word elitism, but that perception of I have the correct answer because I understand more of the details. So you can't have a conceptual thing because you don't know as many facts as me. That's not how knowledge works. That is a woke mindset. I have the right answers. Therefore, I have the right answers.
Israel have a right to try to retrieve those hostages? They have a moral obligation to try to retrieve those hostages? Sure. That's beside the point. It's not what I'm talking about. All right, let's keep playing.
I'm not going to make you guess. It's very simple. The kidnapper in all cases. Let's talk about why. Because the kidnapper set off a chain of events that made it so that the law enforcement officer had to respond. And that response led to the deaths of children. That kidnapper is the but-for cause of those deaths.
Okay, let's pause it here for a second, because this is just, I mean, this logic is ridiculous. And she's, as I've seen a couple, I guess she's a lawyer. I'm seeing a couple of these.
She's a lawyer. Oh my God. Oh my God. Like that, it's understandable. It's just some random person is thinking this way, especially if they are subject to all the propaganda that we've seen. But a lawyer? Like, this is what you do. This is what you do. You argue and you find the issues with the structure of other people's arguments. Just don't use that chick if you get in any kind of legal trouble.
Lawyers who try to defend these policies just abuse the but-for clause, which is like not at all what it means. Like the but-for clause is like something that they'll use in
it's actually a BBL term. So they say but for because you have your booty and then you get the BBL and it's like for. So but for, the but for clause.
Court cases to kind of like establish, like it's limited in scope, right? So like if you're drunk driving and you hit somebody and they go, but for you being drunk, you wouldn't have hit this person, then okay, we can establish responsibility. But this is just totally abusing it. Like you set off a chain of events, therefore responsibility goes out the window.
The butterfly effect. If Israel had never been Jews, then Hamas never would have attacked.
Like if again, in the example, which is much closer to what we're talking about here, which is law enforcement blows up the building and kills a bunch of innocent civilians, they can't go, but for this guy taking someone hostage, I wouldn't have done it. Even if that's true, they'd still be guilty. It doesn't matter. You can't say, oh, you set off a chain of events. Therefore, as she just admitted, you don't have carte blanche. So then your entire argument here falls apart.
Yeah. So it just means like this thing wouldn't happen unless this happened. So when they say, but for the kidnapper doing that, then the girl is arguing that that law enforcement could blow up the building, level the building. And they wouldn't have any responsibility for that because they wouldn't have blown up the building if the kidnapper didn't kidnap. But of course, the obvious flaw in that logic is that there's steps in between blowing up the building that a lot of people seem to want to ignore. Yermot said, if Israel didn't exist, they wouldn't have been attacked. Exactly, man. I mean, it's just that simple. How dare they exist?
That's not the case. It's not the case that just because someone set off a chain of events, therefore nobody else has any responsibility for how they act. And again, if you really were to take this to its ultimate logical conclusion, right, then it would be carte blanche. Israel could do anything they wanted to Gaza, right? I mean, they could round up the population and just shoot everybody in the head. They could drop nukes on Gaza and say, hey, they set off a chain of events. Now, we all know on some level that this is complete horseshit. All right, let's keep playing.
Knowingly and intentionally buried himself among innocent children in order to...
How old do you think she is? Take a guess. Take a guess how old she is. I was going to say like younger, like 19, 20. But she's a lawyer. She's got to be at least mid-20s. I don't know. What do you guys think? Shout out to our boy, Indie Film. Welcome to the party. Said, make Gaza great again. Not on my dime. Not on my dime. We're trying to determine how old is this lawyer. Making terribly horrible, stupid arguments. 23, 27. Yeah, it seems somewhere in there. I mean, we're not going to know. We're just guessing here. But, I mean, you know.
Knowingly and intentionally buried himself among innocent children in order to evade capture. It is that is immoral. It is that is repugnant. And it is that caused the death of the children.
So there can in any situation, there can only ever be one bad thing. It's not a possibility where somebody does a bad thing and then that creates an opportunity for somebody else to do another bad thing, because but for the first person doing the bad thing, the second person wouldn't have been able to do it. So everything that ever happens is but for Adam and Eve, if you believe in that, I guess. Yeah, that's TikTok. I mean, they basically, it's almost like a default. Like you have to turn off the touch up. But you know, we gotta train our eyes to see through the filter.
Moral. It is that is repugnant, and it is that caused the death of the children. I'm not saying this as a matter of opinion.
You are, though.
Let me reiterate, that is factually, morally, and legally the case.
It's not. Just because you say that it is factual doesn't make it factual. I don't know if you know this, but that's just saying things.
The next question then is, would the law...
Oh, now we have another question. Okay.
Morally and legally the case. The next question then is, would the law enforcement officer face any responsibility? Yes, that is also possibly the case. In the
so it is possible that there's more than one bad thing that happens in a scenario.
Instance that their actions were negligent, or in the instance that they had another alternative that would not have involved harming those children, they would probably not face criminal consequences, but there may be some consequences regardless.
It's funny because I would, again, we were just talking about how the left-right thing doesn't really fit, especially with the Israel thing. But it does seem that pro-Palestinian people, I believe she was, that seems to be where she's coming from. The fuck was I just going to say?
Face criminal consequences, but there may be some consequences regardless.
Let's pause it again.
What the hell was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say. What did I just say? That she's probably, vaguely on the left and, defund the police and this, that. But you talk about it in the context of Israel, and now, well, the cops, they had to do whatever they could. The poor cops. Now, I'm for law and order. I don't really like the police, but I'm consistent in that across the board. These people have no principles, just positions.
No, they face criminal consequences. I mean, again, I'm not making an appeal to the law. I'm making an appeal to morality and logic. But if you're asking me if the cops blew up a building, like not in your bullshit scenario, but in the scenario of what Israel's actually doing here.
Sure. I mean, well, in one sense, I hope not, because I was looking at that in a certain way. So that would really reflect badly on me if she was 11. But if she's that smart, I mean, not that smart, but for 11, that would be pretty smart. That's a vote in confidence for Gen Alpha.
If the cops blew up a building, like not in your bullshit scenario, but in the scenario of what Israel's actually doing here, they'd go to jail for life without parole or get the death penalty.
Derek Chauvin didn't even do that.
Because it's premeditated murder. Intentionally killing innocent civilians is premeditated murder. And intentionally killing innocent civilians when you do it in a uniform is still the same thing.
How crazy is it that he needs to do not one, not two, but two debates and 2 different podcasts just to say murdering people intentionally is bad? What are we doing here, folks?
All right, let's keep playing.
Mario, listen to me good. There is...
Listen to you well. Superman does good. You do things well.
No scenario where that kidnapper is not 100% morally, legally, and factually responsible for those deaths. Now, let's make the analogy to the war in Gaza.
Okay, let's just pause it for a second. I mean, she's just completely wrong about this. Like, completely wrong. Like, no, it's not the case. It's not the case that if somebody takes hostages, that now they are 100% morally responsible for whatever the response is to that. That's just not true. And again, in the example, if the cops leveled the building and killed all those people, nobody would accept that, oh, sorry, we're not responsible because somebody kidnapped a child. Therefore, we could kill a whole bunch more children. Nobody would.
Somebody kidnapped a child. Therefore, we can now kill children. That is the type of morality that people on the woke side of things, whether it's the woke left or the woke right, determine how they approach each different scenario. I don't understand it. I don't understand how it is this difficult to get to a point where we can agree that intentionally killing non-combatants is a bad thing. Not even saying it's not a thing that needs to be done. We haven't gotten to that part of the conversation yet. Again, Quamtak was asking, well, what else do we do? Maybe nothing. Maybe this is all we can do, but can we at least acknowledge that it is a bad thing to do? That if we are going to do this bad thing, it's because they want 1,000 October 7th and da-da-da-da-da. If you can't do that, then you can't also have the passion for doing that. You gotta stand on business. Make the argument, have the right argument, be willing to be corrected if you're wrong, and then when you're not, then you get the passion. Then you get to be, not even hard-headed, but just like, no, I don't want the fuck, it's good. You have to go through that first. You don't just get to say things like, well, it's factual because I said so. End of story. It doesn't work like that. Bambi, coming in at the last minute, said, why would she think that's the case? That makes no sense. Because she is dogmatically against Israel. She is dogmatically against Israel, and so there must be a way to twist it up in her mind that, oh, it's about the authority and the laws of war. So even though, of course, they are killing innocent people, they are killing civilians, it's okay. It's not bad. Because you could certainly say, yeah, it's really bad, just like we were talking with Hiroshima, it's really bad, but it's necessary because, and nobody is making that argument. When that argument, well, that's okay. Let me take that back. People are making that argument, but they're not willing to engage in the step of, okay, this is my position. Am I wrong? Could I be wrong? Could there be a better way? Doesn't seem like they're interested. So, I mean, I'm really glad that we got the opportunity to come back to this. I would have liked to see the rest, watch the rest of the JRE debate, but you guys weren't into it. But lucky for me, shout out to Piers Morgan, shout out to Dave Smith, and shout out to this chick for being stupid enough to give us a reason to still talk about this. So I'll do another vote in Discord, but I think everybody is down for a Tim Dillon comedy special after party. If you are not a member, guys, make sure you join. It starts at just $2.99 a month. That's half the cost of a cup of coffee, and gets you not only that gets you 12 at the very least, 12 after parties. And we got movie nights. Sometimes we mix them up. We got extra channels in there. But even if you don't want to do that, it is still absolutely free to join the server itself. You only get the free chat, but we're in there all day. That link is pinned at the top of the chat. And the member link is pinned. Well, not pinned. It's at the very bottom of the chat. There's a few different tiers, but like we said, you know what? Why don't we, just do this. Hold on. If you guys are enjoying the show, the party rages on 24/7 over in our Discord. The link is pinned to the top of the chat and is absolutely free to join 24/7. We are in there hanging out, having a great time. And guys, it is absolutely free. However, if you are a member of this channel here on YouTube, you can scroll right below that video and hit that join button. Starts at $2.99. There's a few different tiers, but $2.99 will get you in. It gets you members only live streams here on YouTube, all that other good stuff. But it opens up the full Discord server. So we've got the free chat that is open to anyone. Anybody can join and talk. But as you can see, that is just one of our channels. There's a bunch of different channels here, including our disciple chat for members only, our word of the day watch party, where we're talking about all this stuff. And of course, we have the voice channel here, where we are hanging out at this moment. Shout out to everybody in the Discord server. Say hello and tell them to come and join.
Hello, come and join.
There you go, guys. Simple as that. See you there. All right, guys. See you there. That is where we are headed right now. Morty will be there. I will be there. All the cool kids will be there. And shout out to the disciples. I'm very much looking forward to it. Thank you so very, very much for hanging out tonight, guys. I know you could be doing anything in the world, but you are here hanging out with me and Morty, and it means the world. If you are new, please do hit that subscribe. I am live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, and sometimes whenever I feel like it. And so you should definitely hit the bell. But guys, like I said, the show is here. This is a free show just for you guys' enjoyment and everything. What we are really doing here is building a community, and it is free to join the community. Come on through, guys. The worst possible thing that could happen is you don't like it and you leave. It's free to join. If you're not familiar with Discord, as you saw, it's mostly just like a group chat. It's basically just the chat that we have here on that we have here on YouTube. It's the same looking type thing. So if you can do that, then you can do Discord, and we will happily teach you guys. Thank you so very, very much again. Let's shout out our donations. We had our boy TV Viewerski with $10. We had Zippy with multiple Rumble rants. Thank you so very, very much. And of course, Josie with the super sticker. Thank you so very, very much for hanging out, guys. Once again, this is Morty, and I have been your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Until next time, guys, we are out of here. Peace.